Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
In the greenhouse, Felicia flashed a strained smile, yet her secrets clung to every breath. She wasn't just juggling real estate deals, she was juggling her husband's life. One cryptic text from Bryce sealed the truth. Felicia, Albert's beloved wife, had aligned with a stranger to exploit a murder for insurance scheme. "Sign it," she whispered, pressing the policy forms into Albert's trembling hands. The orchard was set for a lethal accident, but nobody realized how far she'd go. Had Felicia sold her soul for quick cash, or was she trapped in a deeper web? A single bullet in the orchard would reveal everything. Before we dive into the full story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this tale, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Chapter 1. The air in Greenhaven Garden Shop smelled of freshly watered ferns and newly stirred potting soil. Albert stood near a row of young magnolia saplings, quietly appreciating their vibrant leaves in the mid-morning sunlight. At first glance, he looked like any ordinary horticulturist modest, wearing work jeans and a faded green polo with the shop's logo stitched on the chest. Yet a certain alertness in his dark eyes hinted at a hidden layer beneath his calm exterior. He turned to see Abby, a bright-eyed trainee, carefully rearranging seed packets at the far end of a colorful display table. She'd been a quick study since joining Greenhaven. Her subtle questions about plant spacing and irrigation schedules often led to deeper insights, as if she was training her own observational skills more than anything. Albert felt a twinge of approval, recalling how he, too, once learned to read the world in small details. In a corner near the customer desk, the older, meticulous Dennis was flipping through receipts, double-checking the daily sales register. Tall and thin, with hair that had gone silver long before his age really demanded it, Dennis was the official face of horticultural knowledge in the shop. He greeted neighbors who popped by to select fresh herbs or ask about garden pests, but always defaulted to Albert's quiet leadership for more complicated tasks. On this particular morning, business was steady, but unremarkable. A few customers wandered in to buy succulents or ornamental shrubs. Meanwhile, soft instrumental music played through overhead speakers, giving the shop a relaxed vibe. It was the kind of day Felicia would ordinarily call too slow for her taste. But Felicia wasn't around. She was never around the shop much anymore, always off somewhere, apparently juggling real estate clients, or so she claimed. Albert's phone buzzed lightly in his pocket. With an economical gesture, he fished it out. The screen displayed a short message from Wayne, a name that triggered old memories. Wayne, encrypted, further info on possible Russian interest. We'll talk soon. Albert frowned faintly. Ever since that final operation in the Middle East, 7 years ago, when he'd tangentially messed up an ISIS smuggling chain that had also involved a shadowy group of Russians, he'd been living under the radar, operating a quiet garden business in this unremarkable suburb. This was supposed to be his sanctuary from the old life. Yet he could never fully erase the tension in his gut whenever a new Russian rumor floated his way. He pressed the phone to sleep and slid it back into his pocket. His focus returned to the greenhouse, to the hum of daily life, outwardly calm. The storm in his mind stayed hidden behind steady eyes. Albert set down a small trowel and stepped through the side door connecting the greenhouse to the main shop area. He found Felicia, his wife of nearly a decade, standing by the front counter. She wore a sleek pencil skirt, paired with a fitted blazer, her hair styled in a fashionable chignon, nothing like a typical gardener. Her perfume lingered in the air, a sharp, expensive aroma that didn't mingle well with potting soil and fertilizer. He paused, quietly, taking her in. Felicia was gifted at turning heads in a room, yet she always seemed vaguely dissatisfied in these last few months. She'd come to the shop unannounced. That alone piqued Albert's suspicion. She tapped manicured nails on the countertop while Dennis patiently answered a question about local property lines. When she caught sight of her husband, her eyes flicked with an emotion he couldn't quite pinpoint relief or anxiety. "Albert," she said with a bright smile, "I'm so glad you're free. I'd like you to meet someone. There's an important matter we need to discuss." Albert's gaze went beyond her to see Bryce, an impeccably dressed man with gelled hair and a crisp navy blue suit, stepping in from behind a display of hanging baskets. He offered a textbook grin that never touched his eyes. "Albert," Felicia continued in that slightly forced official tone she used with new real estate clients, "this is Bryce Hillman." She paused half a second, then corrected. "Bryce Volkoff. He's a consultant who specializes in life insurance and financial planning. He's been helping me restructure some real estate investments for future growth, and he strongly believes we should consider updating your coverage as well." Albert extended a handshake with polite calm. "Pleasure to meet you," he said, though a flicker of mistrust sparked behind his eyes. He gently squeezed Bryce's hand in a measured greeting, just enough pressure to feel out Bryce's reflex. Bryce's handshake was smooth, but oddly lacking warmth. Bryce's voice exuded polished charm. "I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Richards, is it?" Albert gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Technically, he used only his first name for business, seldom volunteering his last. "Yes, Albert Richards." "Oh, wonderful." Bryce turned to Felicia. "See, this is the man I've been waiting to meet. If we can finalize an additional insurance plan, you'll both have peace of mind. Considering your expanding garden business, it's only wise to protect Felicia's interests should anything unexpected happen." Albert forced a small grin. "Sure, we can talk over the details when I'm less busy." Felicia's eyes lit with an odd glimmer as though pressing for a resolution. "It'll only take a few minutes, Albert. I know you're busy with the shop, but Bryce has so many valuable pointers." "I'd prefer we schedule it for tomorrow or next week," Albert cut in firmly. "I have a few orders to fill first." Felicia pursed her lips. Her reaction was mild, but enough to reveal a trace of frustration. "Of course," she turned to Bryce. "We can reschedule, right?" Bryce shrugged magnanimously. "Absolutely." Then he angled a quick, curious glance around the greenhouse. "This is a lovely place. You've done well, Mr. Richards." Albert noted how Bryce's gaze lingered on the corners, where security cameras might be hidden. He nodded politely. "Thanks. We try." Dennis stepped around the counter, handing Felicia some mail that had arrived for her. She flicked through the envelopes. "Thank you, Dennis." Then, with a quick brush of her hair, Felicia murmured, "I'll be in the car, Albert. Don't forget lots to do. Good day, Dennis." She offered a half-wave to Abby at the far corner, then glided out the door. Bryce paused, as though he wanted to ask something else, but settled for a professional nod in Albert's direction. "We'll be in touch." Albert watched them go. Only once the door shut and the sound of Felicia's heels faded did he release a quiet exhale. Abby caught his eye from across the room, giving him a questioning look. He simply nodded, acknowledging he, too, found the encounter unsettling. That evening, after Greenhaven's closing hour, Albert found himself alone in the shop, going through receipts on the main counter. The overhead lights had been dimmed except for a small lamp near the register. Outside, the sky glowed with the last streaks of sunset. He methodically tabulated the day's sales, yet his mind kept wandering to Felicia's sudden push for more life insurance coverage. It wasn't as if the idea was inherently bad. Many couples reevaluated their policies once they expanded a business. But the urgency in Felicia's voice, paired with Bryce's two-edger approach, set off warning bells. Albert's entire training, 7 years spent as an elite operative tackling hidden threats, told him that something about Bryce simply did not add up. "Albert?" came a quiet voice from behind. He turned to see Abby standing in the shadow near the greenhouse entrance, her bag slung over her shoulder. He nodded a greeting. "We're closed, Abby. You should head home." She stepped closer, fiddling with the strap of her bag. "I know, but just wanted to say that your wife came by earlier while you were out back." She seemed tense. "Then that Bryce guy was asking me weird questions about the greenhouse layout, like, where does the water line feed in from the city, or who installed the overhead rigging for the heavier plants?" Albert's eyebrows rose. "He asked you that?" She nodded. "Yes, but I pretended I didn't know. They left soon after. I'm not sure if it matters, but I thought you should know." He patted her shoulder gently. "Thanks, Abby. Keep your observations quiet, though." Her eyes flickered with concern. She'd noticed the same alarm signs. "Will do. I'll lock up in the back?" Albert nodded. "Yes. Then go home safe." Alone again, Albert let out a breath. He confirmed all the windows were secured, the new cameras functioning, and then locked the entrance. Although Felicia was presumably home, waiting, he felt no immediate desire to rush back. Instead, he stepped into the small hidden corridor that led to the basement, a place rarely visited by employees or casual customers. Below the bustling greenhouse lay a converted basement that doubled as Albert's personal command center. Thick concrete walls, sound-dampening foam, and a concealed door system ensured prying eyes and ears wouldn't discover it easily. Inside, the space was lined with metal shelves holding a hodgepodge of supplies, some gardening-related, many not. A corner desk bristled with monitors linked to the shop's security cameras. Another corner held a locked cabinet of specialized gear that hinted at his more dangerous skill set. Albert flicked on a subdued overhead lamp, illuminating the bank of screens. With a few taps, he reviewed footage from the day. He saw Felicia and Bryce near the greenhouse racks, glimpsed their body language. Bryce's posture suggested more than mere professionalism, an air of possession, or at least a confidence that exceeded typical business courtesy. Felicia, for her part, wore that forced smile again, occasionally biting her lip. At the desk, a second phone, a secure device, vibrated softly. Albert picked it up, recognized Wayne's unique encryption signal, and answered in a hushed tone. "Wayne," he said. Wayne's voice crackled. "Albert, your hunch was correct. Bryce Volkov using an alias or partial real name, not sure. He circulated among questionable circles, possibly ex-GRU connections, maybe not direct. He's flagged for insurance murders in at least 2 states, but covers his tracks well. He's apparently forging alliances with known Russian criminal affiliates. I suspect he's scoping you out for the same reason. Word on some back channels suggests a big payday attached to your name." Albert's jaw clenched. "He's linked to Felicia. She wants me to sign a new life insurance policy with him." A small pause on the line. "Sounds like a classic infiltration. They'll build the policy large enough to gain a massive payout upon your accidental demise. You need to tread carefully. Gather evidence. I can't intervene openly unless we want your old identity out in the open." Albert's old identity. The mere phrase stoked memories of covert missions, tracking arms routes that financed extremist cells, crossing paths with unscrupulous Russian fixers. He'd known then that simply retiring might never be fully possible. "All right," he murmured. "I'll watch him closely. Let me see if Felicia is being manipulated or if she's in on it wholeheartedly. For now, I'll pretend ignorance. If I need more backup, I'll let you know." Wayne's voice softened. "Take care, man." Don't let your guard down." Ending the call, Albert sank into the desk chair. A swirl of emotion churned in his chest. He'd built Greenhaven as a place of peace, but old enemies had found him. Worse, it seemed Felicia might be complicit in her own husband's downfall. He pressed his fingertips together, inhaled steadily, and resolved to remain calm, gather facts, and never lose the upper hand. The house that Albert and Felicia shared was on the outskirts of town, a cozy craftsman-style home with a big wraparound porch. Albert arrived late, nearly 10 p.m., to find only one light on in the living room. When he stepped inside, he saw Felicia curled on the couch, eyes on the TV but clearly not watching. She muted the screen the moment he entered. "You're home late," she said, forcing a small smile. "Customers," he answered simply, removing his jacket and slipping off his boots. An awkward silence lingered. Albert studied her face. She appeared uneasy, her eyes slightly bloodshot. Maybe she'd been crying. He approached carefully, keeping his tone mild. "You okay, Felicia?" She tugged the blanket draped across her legs. "Just exhausted. So many showings. Then Bryce insisted on meeting you. I'm sorry if it inconvenienced you today." He shook his head. "Did he push you to bring him?" Felicia hesitated. "He suggested it. Said it was the best time if we want the insurance policy updated soon." I just want us to be secure, Albert." She gazed up with an odd vulnerability. "I know you worry about our finances. If something happened to you..." Albert felt a spike of anger but kept his voice neutral. "We can discuss it in detail after I review the documents. Okay?" She nodded, a mixture of relief and something else crossing her features. "Sure. Thanks. I'm heading to bed then." As she left the room, Albert stared at the blank TV screen. Something about her manner said she was in deeper trouble than she dared admit. He made a mental note to check her phone logs. He disliked invading privacy, but circumstances demanded vigilance. If Felicia was orchestrating something lethal with Bryce, or being coerced, he had to know. A restless night brought dreams of scorching deserts and tense negotiations. He saw flickers of the past, forging alliances with local informants, intercepting convoys rumored to carry weapons for ISIS, encountering a handful of Russian advisors who profited from the chaos. He recalled an operation that ended violently, leaving him with the distinct impression that his final act, sabotaging a weapons shipment, had financially devastated certain Russian players. He jerked awake at dawn, heart hammering, a faint film of sweat on his forehead. The memory of that final mission was always the same. Blood spilled in the sand, the acrid smell of diesel from a burning truck, and the echo of foreign curses as he fled with crucial intel. It had haunted him for years, and now, that distant vendetta seemed to have found him in the guise of a cunning insurance man named Bryce. The following morning, Albert arrived at Greenhaven earlier than usual. Dennis was already outside, rearranging potted daisies on a wheeled cart. He lifted his head as Albert approached, a mixture of curiosity in his gaze. "Busy day ahead?" Dennis asked in a mild tone. Albert nodded, glancing at the street. "Potentially. I'll be in the greenhouse mostly. Keep an eye on the front for me?" Dennis gave a thoughtful nod. "Of course. Just let me know if there's anything unusual you want me to look out for." That subtle phrase told Albert that Dennis, too, sensed the tension. "If Bryce or Felicia show up, let me know right away," Albert said. "I might be in the back office or the greenhouse basement." Dennis's gaze flicked with concern. Understood. Albert patted his shoulder, grateful for the older man's loyalty. For years, Dennis had been a simple, reliable horticulturalist. But now, an unspoken alliance formed. Both men recognized an undercurrent of danger coursing through the shop. It didn't take long for Bryce to appear. By mid-morning, the front bell chimed, and Bryce's polished shoes clicked on the wooden flooring. He was alone this time. No Felicia at his side. Dennis discreetly alerted Albert via a short text on the internal messaging system. "He's here." Albert stepped out to the main counter, wearing a friendly expression. "Bryce? Good to see you," he lied smoothly. Bryce turned, that salesman's smile plastered on his face. "Albert, I was in the area and thought we might finalize a few details for the policy. No sense delaying, right?" The man's gaze lingered on the corners of the shop, as though searching for vantage points. Albert feigned a modest shrug. "Sure, we can talk in the office." He led Bryce to the modest back office area, a small desk, a few chairs, a couple of files. This wasn't his hidden basement, but a normal workspace where they did routine paperwork. Bryce took in the surroundings, then smoothly placed a packet of documents in front of Albert. "Here are the forms. Once signed, the coverage is immediate." He paused, leaning in. "Felicia mentioned you might hesitate. Let me assure you it's standard coverage with a slight increase to reflect your business's growth. In the unlikely event something happens to you, she won't be left with debts, funeral costs, or, well, you understand." Albert tapped the papers with a finger. "I'll need a day or two to read thoroughly. I'm not one for quick signatures, no offense." Bryce's jaw tightened momentarily before reverting to that grin. "Of course. Take all the time you need within reason." He offered a little laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Have Felicia forward me any questions you have." Albert nodded. "That's kind of you." Bryce's phone buzzed and he glanced down. "Apologies, client call." He quickly ended the ring. "I do have to run soon, but I'd love a quick look at your greenhouse expansions. You know, just personal curiosity." Albert gave an affable nod. "I have a few minutes." Inside, alarms blared in his mind. Why is he so insistent on seeing the greenhouse? They walked through the side door into the greenhouse. The air felt warmer, moister, as fans circulated among rows of potted roses, herbs, and exotic tropicals. Bryce asked superficial questions about plant shipments, overhead sprayers, and the building's overall structure. Albert responded with half-truths, carefully omitting mention of the security upgrades. A few times, Bryce made casual mention of accidental hazards like, "Must be risky handling certain fertilizers," or "Ever worry about chemical leaks here?" Each time, Albert deflected, reading the subtext. Bryce was scouting for the perfect lethal accident. After a circuit around the greenhouse, Bryce extended his hand. "Thank you, Albert. I'll be in touch about those forms. Let's do Felicia a favor and wrap it up soon. Yes?" Albert shook his hand, looking him straight in the eye. "Sure thing." Once Bryce left, Albert retreated to the back office and shut the door. He locked it for privacy, then took the forms Bryce left. Checking them carefully, he realized the coverage sum was triple his current policy. The beneficiary was exclusively Felicia. Odd disclaimers dotted the pages, referencing accidental death provisions with special high payouts. A chill ran through him. They'd spelled out the scheme in black and white. If he died unexpectedly, particularly from any number of greenhouse-related mishaps, Felicia would receive a huge sum. He suspected Felicia might not have read the fine print. Then again, maybe she had. His next move was to rummage through the locked filing cabinet where Felicia sometimes stored real estate documents. He found some of her recent statements. One envelope stood out with foreign bank insignia. He scanned the contents. A large deposit into her name from an account with unclear origins. The sum matched the timeline he'd gleaned from phone logs. Wayne's words echoed. She's not just coerced. She might be heavily involved. Albert felt a sting of betrayal. The woman he loved, who once supported his transition away from covert ops, was knee-deep in a plot to kill him for money. Unless she'd been blackmailed, but these sums were too large. Greed might have overshadowed any loyalty she once had. With copies of the suspicious documents, he locked the originals away. Another quiet beep came from his phone, a message from Wayne. "Anything new?" Albert typed back. "Felicia might be financially complicit. Confirming details. We'll proceed carefully." He sat there in silence, heartbreak mingling with anger. Did Felicia truly want him dead, or was she just enthralled by Bryce's manipulative charm? Either way, he had to protect himself. The question was, how far would Felicia go? Albert locked the office, stepped back out into the greenhouse, and pretended nothing had changed. But in his mind, the realization was stark and inescapable. He was now living on borrowed time, with enemies, both old and new, circling close. The garden he'd built to symbolize a fresh start had become a battlefield in disguise, and he wasn't about to lose. Chapter 2. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window the next morning as Albert poured himself a cup of coffee. Felicia sat across the table, nibbling a slice of toast but barely touching it. She wore a business-casual outfit, likely for a day of showing properties, yet her eyes flicked to the side each time Albert moved. Tension hung between them like a heavy fog. He took a deliberate sip of coffee. "I got the insurance papers from Bryce." Felicia paused mid-bite. "Oh? And what do you think?" He set the mug down. "Big changes to the policy. Are you sure we need coverage that high?" She forced a laugh. "Bryce says it's standard. Besides, if you're expanding the shop, you'll be in contact with potentially hazardous chemicals, right?" Her voice quivered slightly, as if reciting lines she'd rehearsed. "Wouldn't want me left with, well, any debts if, heaven forbid, something happened." Albert's gaze bored into her. He didn't lash out, but the chill in his tone was unmistakable. "We can talk about it more tonight. I'll sign once I'm fully satisfied." Felicia mustered a weak nod, unable to hold his stare. She abruptly stood, gathering her purse and keys. "I'm running late. I'll see you later." He silently watched her leave, suspecting she was hurrying off for a phone call or a meeting with Bryce. Shortly after, Albert arrived at Green Haven. Dennis wasn't in yet, but Abby stood near the succulent display, labeling new stock. He beckoned her to the side. "Abby, I might need your help with something, off the record. You up for it?" Her eyes widened, reflecting curiosity. "Sure. What's going on?" He gave her a measured look. "You said you noticed Bryce snooping around the greenhouse. I need you to keep an even closer eye on him if he comes back. Also, I might need you to run errands outside the shop, like checking certain addresses or verifying whether certain individuals are meeting." Abby nodded slowly, as though she suspected the seriousness. "I can do that." "Good. Keep it discreet. Don't mention it to Dennis or anyone else yet. If anything unusual happens, text me. And, Abby, be cautious. This is bigger than some random insurance guy." He paused. "Understood?" She swallowed. "Yes, I understand. You can count on me, Albert." He offered a brief, appreciative nod, then returned to the front to set up the day's station. Midday, Abby discreetly approached Albert, whispering that Felicia had just phoned the shop line, leaving a message that she'd be working through lunch with a client. Albert recognized the coded subtext. She was likely with Bryce, possibly finalizing details. He forced a calm expression. "Thanks, Abby. Keep me posted if she calls again." Within his hidden basement, Albert accessed a private phone tracker. He'd quietly installed an app on Felicia's phone weeks ago, suspecting something amiss. Now, the software indicated her location near an upscale bistro downtown. He toggled over to the greenhouse cameras, ensuring everything was normal on the shop floor. Then he grabbed his jacket and quietly slipped out. Parking a block away, Albert approached the bistro's large front windows. Inside, well-dressed patrons chatted over salads and wine. He circled around to the side corridor, where tinted windows provided partial glimpses of the dining area. A quick glance revealed Felicia at a corner table, Bryce seated across from her. They leaned in close, as though in intense discussion. Albert took out his phone, snapping a few zoomed photos. Felicia's posture was tense. Bryce's was confident, a hand occasionally resting on Felicia's forearm in a gesture of reassurance or ownership. Even from a distance, the body language screamed conspiracy. A pang of sorrow twisted in Albert's chest. The woman who once cheered him on at local horticulture fairs now conspired with a man planning his death. He inhaled slowly, fighting the urge to confront them on the spot. Instead, he stepped back, returning to his car. The best approach was methodical. Gather unequivocal proof, then strike. Back at Greenhaven, Albert retreated to his hidden workshop. He placed a call on the secure line. Wayne answered on the second ring. "Update?" Wayne asked. Albert relayed Felicia's lunch meeting with Bryce. "They're stepping up the timeline. Possibly they want me dead soon. I need to confirm how Felicia's finances tie in. She got a deposit from a shell account overseas. I have partial records." "Send me copies," Wayne responded. "I'll trace them. Meanwhile, watch your back. If Bryce is ex-military or connected to serious criminals, he's not bluffing. The moment he's certain you'll sign the policy, they might attempt a staged accident." Albert's jaw tightened. "I'm prepared. If Felicia is fully complicit, I can't guarantee a gentle approach. She's my wife, but—" Wayne's tone softened. "I know. This is tough, but do what you must to stay alive. If you need an extraction or more direct intervention, I can arrange discreet support. We don't want a full-blown war zone in your town, though. Keep it clean if you can." Albert gave a grim chuckle. "I always do." They ended the call. He stood there, heart heavy. He had never imagined a day where he'd have to treat Felicia as a threat. But here he was. That late afternoon, as Albert was showing a regular customer around the orchard section behind the greenhouse, a sleek black car pulled up. Abby hurried out to intercept. Bryce emerged, ignoring her attempts to direct him to the front. He strode across the orchard with a self-assured swagger. "Albert," Bryce called, as though addressing an old friend. "A moment, please." Albert excused himself from the customer, stepping aside. "Yes?" Bryce waved a glossy folder. "I've finalized the policy for immediate activation. Felicia insisted we expedite." Albert's eyes flicked to the orchard gates, ensuring no other eavesdroppers were close. "I said I'd need time to read it. No changes there." Bryce forced a casual laugh. "Come on, friend, let's not drag this out. Sign it today, and your wife's peace of mind is assured." His eyes grew cold. "Or is there a reason you're hesitating?" Albert fought the urge to show his anger. Instead, he maintained an even tone. "Felicia might want it done yesterday, but it's still my life insurance. I read everything I signed. I'll let you know by tomorrow." Bryce's jaw tensed. "Tomorrow, then. Don't keep Felicia waiting." He stepped back, glancing around the orchard, scanning. "Nice orchard you have. Could be tricky if, say, someone had an accident alone back here." Albert gave a mirthless smile. "Indeed, accidents happen if one isn't careful. Thanks for the tip." Their gazes locked in a silent battle. Finally, Bryce pivoted and returned to his car. Albert stood there, blood pounding in his ears. He'd never been one to show fear, and he wouldn't start now. After closing, Dennis lingered in the greenhouse, reorganizing supply shelves. Albert found him methodically labeling different plant fertilizers. "Dennis," Albert began softly, "I might need you to take a couple days off soon, a paid break." Dennis paused, turning to face him. "A break? Why?" Albert's eyes swept the greenhouse. "There may be trouble ahead. I don't want you caught in the middle. You've been loyal to me for years. I'd rather keep you safe." Dennis set down the label maker. "If you think I'll run when the shop is threatened, you're wrong. I can help. I'm not as spry as I used to be, but I've got good eyes and ears." Albert hesitated. "I appreciate that. Let me handle the brunt. But if I ask you to leave abruptly, promise me you won't argue. We might only have a small window to act." Dennis pursed his lips, uncertain. "All right. I trust your judgment. But I won't vanish without you telling me exactly when and where." Albert managed a faint smile. "Deal." That evening, Felicia was already home when Albert arrived. The tension between them was palpable in the living room. She fiddled with a glass of wine, eyes flicking up as he entered. "How was your day?" she asked, voice thin. He removed his jacket, dropping it on a chair. "Eventful. Bryce came by again. Very insistent about me signing." Felicia swallowed, glancing away. "He just wants to get things in order." Albert stepped closer, noticing the faint tremble in her hands. "How deep are you in, Felicia?" She blinked, feigning ignorance. "What do you mean?" His stare was unrelenting. "No more games. Is Bryce threatening you? Or offering you something? Why is this life insurance so urgent?" She exhaled shakily, tears forming in her eyes. For a split second, it looked like she might confess, but then she steeled herself. I just want security, Albert. I can't keep living in fear you'll vanish or something. So sign it, please." Her words were rehearsed. He recognized the pattern. She wasn't telling the full truth. Anger roiled in his chest, but he kept calm. "All right, tomorrow." She visibly exhaled in relief. He watched her reaction, sadness welling in him. Tomorrow might be the day they tested him for final betrayal. Late that night, after Felicia had retreated to the guest room she'd been sleeping there, for better rest, she claimed, Albert quietly moved around the house, planting small motion sensors near windows. He was no stranger to infiltration tactics. If Bryce or any accomplices tried staging an accident overnight, he'd be ready. He also prepared a concealed voice recorder in the living room in case Felicia made or received any calls. The sorrow of having to spy on his own wife twisted his heart, but he had no choice. Finally, he set a new alarm on his phone for pre-dawn. He intended to gather more data from Felicia's phone logs and then contact Wayne to share it. If tomorrow was their big push, he had to be a step ahead. Albert lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling. The world he'd constructed, this peaceful life of gardening and quiet modesty, was cracking under the weight of deception. Tomorrow, he would go through the motions, sign the policy, and see how Felicia and Bryce reacted. Yet inside, he vowed that if they dared attempt to kill him, they'd quickly discover the cunning he'd honed years ago in the Middle East was far from dormant. Chapter 3. Morning broke with a surprisingly bright sky. Albert rose early, preparing himself mentally. Felicia emerged from the guest room, subdued but purposeful. Without speaking, she laid the insurance documents on the kitchen table next to a pen. "You said you'd do it," she murmured, trying to sound casual but failing. Albert studied her a moment, then flipped through the pages, feigning final review. In truth, he'd already memorized them. After a moment, he took the pen and signed. Felicia let out an audible breath, relief coloring her expression. He noticed her fingers trembling slightly as she gathered the papers. "I'll get these to Bryce. Thank you for trusting me." He said nothing. She scurried out, as though worried he might change his mind. The door clicked shut behind her. Albert sank into a chair, every fiber of him tense. The net was closing. Now, with the policy officially in place, Bryce had zero reason to delay. Before leaving for Green Haven, Albert checked a digital screen in his workshop at home. He'd placed a tiny tracker on Felicia's key ring last night. The device showed her heading downtown, probably to meet Bryce again. Good. Let them plan. Let them think he was unsuspecting. He sighed, glancing at the silent house. The yard outside glistened with morning dew. He remembered how Felicia used to love planting wildflowers with him, her laughter bright. Those days felt lifetimes away. Mid-morning at Green Haven, Dennis welcomed customers while Abby busied herself in the greenhouse. Albert strolled around, chatting with a couple picking out tomato seedlings. On the surface, it was business as usual. Underneath, his mind raced, anticipating Bryce's next move. Around noon, a hush fell over the shop as Todd, an unfamiliar face to the staff, but apparently recommended by Felicia for tree trimming, walked in. He had an athletic build, a confident step, and introduced himself to Dennis. "I'm Todd. Felicia said I could help with some heavier pruning tasks." Dennis nodded slowly, eyes flicking to Albert. "We can always use a strong hand, but we usually do thorough background checks." Todd just grinned. "Felicia told me it's urgent. I'm here to start whenever." Something in his tone suggested he wasn't really seeking approval. Albert approached. "I'm Albert, owner here. Felicia didn't mention you to me, Todd." Todd shrugged nonchalantly. "Maybe she forgot. I'm good at what I do, no worries there." Albert made a point of scanning Todd's posture. Hands calloused, slight bulge at the ankle that might hint at a concealed weapon. "Let's talk in my office," Albert said quietly, leading him away from customers. In the small back office, Todd took a seat, arms crossed. Albert closed the door, leaning against it. "So, you do tree trimming?" Todd's gaze never wavered. "Among other things." Albert masked his annoyance. "Let's see your references." Todd smirked, pulling out a folded paper that looked suspiciously too generic. "Names and numbers. All speak highly of me." Albert flicked it open, noticing phone numbers that looked phony. He wasn't fooled. "All right," he said mildly. "We'll see. For now, you can help with orchard maintenance. Nothing too complicated. Dennis or Abby will show you around." Todd nodded, rising. "Sure thing, boss. Don't worry, I'll handle it." Albert almost laughed at the audacity. Another one of Bryce's henchmen, he thought. Aloud, he merely said, "Welcome aboard for now." Once Todd was out in the orchard, Albert motioned Abby over. They spoke in hushed tones in a corner away from customers. "That's Todd," Albert whispered. "Felicia recommended him. He's not here to prune trees. Keep an eye on him discreetly." Abby paled slightly. "You think he's with Bryce?" Albert nodded. "Yes. Possibly here to set something up. Some accident for me. I need you to look for sabotage, damaged equipment, tampered chemicals, that kind of thing." Abby inhaled, her voice trembling but determined. "Understood. I won't let him out of my sight." Albert squeezed her shoulder gently. "Be careful. If he suspects you're watching, he might become hostile. Don't confront him alone. Let me or Dennis know immediately." She nodded and went back to her tasks, eyes vigilant. Early afternoon, while Albert was dealing with a supplier's phone call, Felicia slipped into the greenhouse. She spotted Abby near a potting bench and hurried over, her expression frantic. "Abby," Felicia breathed, glancing around to ensure Albert wasn't near. "I need to talk to you, please." Abby set down a watering can. "Mrs. Richards, is everything all right?" Felicia wrung her hands. No, it's not. I've done something terrible. I never meant for it to go this far, but Bryce is in control now. He says if we don't follow through, we'll both be in danger. He has ties to some powerful people. Abby's heart pounded. She recalled Albert's warnings. Felicia, you have to tell Mr. Richards. He can help. I can't, Felicia exclaimed in a hushed whisper, tears in her eyes. He'll never forgive me. I was so foolish. Bryce promised big money. He said Albert would never be hurt, that it was just a ruse to get better rates or something. But now it's real. Abby steadied her. Then let me talk to him. Please, he'll find a way. Felicia shook her head desperately. No, not yet. I need to figure out how to keep Bryce from killing him. I'm so scared. If you see anything suspicious, tell me. We can stop it quietly. Abby's eyes flashed with conflicting emotions. She felt an urge to defend Albert, but also recognized Felicia's trembling remorse. All right, Abby said at last, but you must realize the only real solution is for Albert to know everything. Felicia sobbed once, stepping away as footsteps approached. I have to go, she whispered. Then she darted out, leaving Abby reeling with confusion. Later, Abby noticed Todd lingering by the greenhouse's control panel, where ventilation and irrigation systems were regulated. He had a small toolbox open, rummaging for something. She pretended to look busy near the succulents, but her peripheral vision tracked his every move. He removed a small device from his pocket, tinkered behind the control panel. Then he pulled out a second device, pressing it against a pipe that fed chemical nutrients to the overhead sprayers. Abby's heart hammered. He's planning some sabotage. She quickly snapped photos with her phone. Then, carefully, she texted Albert. Todd, messing with vent system, possibly planting sabotage. Within minutes, Albert appeared, strolling casually into the greenhouse. Todd tensed, but tried to act normal. Need any help? Albert asked, feigning a light tone. Todd shook his head. Just fixing a minor leak. Nothing big. Let me see, Albert insisted, stepping closer. Todd stiffened. Trust me, it's done. All good. I'll handle the orchard next. Albert locked eyes with him. Sure, just be careful. Todd gave a forced grin, packed up his toolbox, and walked off. Abby exhaled, meeting Albert's gaze. He gave her a slight nod, indicating they'd check the sabotage once Todd was out of sight. When Todd left for the orchard, Albert and Abby quickly opened the control panel. Beneath the normal wiring, they found a small, unfamiliar circuit attached to a remote sensor. Another small capsule was taped near the chemical line, possibly designed to release harmful chemicals at a specific time or command. Abby's face went pale. They're trying to create a fatal chemical accident? Albert's jaw tightened. Likely. Good thing we found it. Let's remove it carefully. He used pliers from his hidden toolkit to disable the new circuit, then gently peeled the capsule off the chemical line. Setting it aside, he sighed in relief. We'll store it in a safe place for evidence. Good work, Abby. She nodded, trembling with adrenaline. Felicia said she didn't want him hurt. She's terrified, but this clearly indicates they plan to kill him. Albert gently corrected. They plan to kill me. Let's stay sharp. That evening, as Albert locked up Greenhaven, Felicia arrived in the parking lot. She stepped out of her car, eyes darting with anxiety. Albert, can we talk? He nodded, leading her to a private corner behind the greenhouse. She swallowed, wringing her hands. I can't keep lying. Bryce told me if I convinced you to sign the policy, we'd both get a huge sum. He said you wouldn't be harmed, that it was all about forging data for a bigger payout. But now I see he's planning something else. He threatened me if I don't comply. I'm so sorry. Albert listened with stony calm. You've been taking money from him. You knew it was shady. Didn't you suspect it might end badly for me? Tears streaked her cheeks. I was an idiot, blinded by greed. We struggled financially last year, and Bryce offered an easy fix. Then I realized who he was. Please, forgive me. I want to help stop him now, but I'm afraid. He has dangerous connections. Albert stared at her, betrayal and sorrow swirling in his chest. Felicia, do you expect me to trust you after this? She choked on a sob. I'm begging you trust me enough to let me fix it. If we both pretend everything is normal, maybe we can lure him out, gather proof, then turn it over to the authorities. His gaze shifted to the nighttime sky. I already have my own plan, he murmured. You can either come clean fully or stay out of the way. If I sense the slightest double-cross, I'll assume you chose Bryce's side. Felicia nodded, tears glistening. I understand. I won't betray you again. He gave a curt nod, stepping away. Inside, he couldn't deny a flicker of pity for her, caught in a net of her own making, scrambling for redemption. But he wouldn't let pity cloud his readiness for battle. Night settled over Green Haven with an uneasy hush. Todd's sabotage attempt had been foiled, but that only meant they'd try again, more aggressively. Felicia's frantic confession revealed she'd once hoped to cheat the system without harming Albert, but Bryce had escalated to lethal stakes. Now, with the trap partially exposed, Albert prepared for the final confrontation, knowing that if Bryce and Todd were cornered, they'd stop at nothing to ensure their lucrative plan ended in Albert's demise. Chapter 4. Early the next day, Albert woke to a secure text from Wayne. Suspect Bryce, truly XGRU affiliate. Large paydays from life insurance fraud in multiple states. Watch Todd also flagged in an assault case. They might attempt final move soon. I can mobilize discreet backup if needed. Albert typed back. Hold for now. Gathering final proof. We'll proceed with caution. He felt a surge of determination. This was the day he'd either force Bryce's downfall or become the victim of a cunning homicide. But he refused to be a victim. At breakfast, Felicia looked pale and exhausted. She sipped coffee, giving Albert anxious glances. Bryce is demanding to see you at the greenhouse around noon. He says we're finalizing the next steps. I told him we'd comply. Albert wiped his mouth with a napkin. Fine. Let him come. I'll be ready. She bit her lip. He might bring Todd or others. Please don't do anything reckless. A humorless smile touched Albert's lips. Reckless is how I survived my old life. Don't worry. I'll be a step ahead. She nodded, subdued. The vow to trust him hung unspoken in the air. At Green Haven, Albert quietly enlisted Abby's help in rechecking all corners of the greenhouse. They set up additional hidden cameras, ensuring angles to capture any illicit moves. He also placed small stashes of protective gear, a hidden baton, a canister of inert gas to counter potential toxins. Dennis hovered in the background, concerned. Albert, you sure I shouldn't call the police now? Albert exhaled. Not yet. The evidence we have might not be enough to charge them with attempted murder. They'd slip away. I need them to incriminate themselves in a tangible way. Dennis pressed his lips but gave a consenting nod. I'll stand by. Just before noon, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Bryce stepped out, followed by Todd. Felicia trailed behind in her own car. They entered the greenhouse, where Albert stood near a row of tall palm plants, arms folded calmly. Bryce's gaze flickered around. Albert, good to see you. Let's discuss the next phase, shall we? Albert kept his voice mild. Sure. Right here? Todd glanced at the overhead rigging, scanning for leftover sabotage. Felicia lingered near the entrance, wringing her hands. Abby pretended to inventory seed packets, ears tuned to every word. Bryce produced a faux legal document. We have a slight addition to the policy and amendment. We need your signature, just to guarantee coverage if you were to, say, suffer a greenhouse mishap. Albert arched an eyebrow. An amendment? After I already signed? Bryce smirked. Yes. Standard procedure, of course. Todd moved closer, posture intimidating. You'll sign? Right now. His tone left no doubt it was a threat. Felicia, trembling, quietly murmured, Please, Albert. Just sign it. Albert locked eyes with Bryce. And if I refuse? Todd stepped forward menacingly. You won't refuse. Albert's heartbeat remained steady. He let out a slow breath. Fine. Let me see. Abby discreetly positioned her phone camera from behind a display. Dennis hovered near the greenhouse entrance, ready to lock it if needed. Albert flipped through the new amendment pages, scanning. It essentially stripped any clauses that might protect him from accidents involving chemical exposure, among other details, a prime setup for a lethal scenario. He raised an eyebrow. This is quite thorough. I see no reason to sign this now. The original policy is enough. Todd's voice rose. Sign it or I'll make you sign. Felicia let out a small sob. Albert, do it. Bryce's smirk grew. He leaned in. You're outnumbered, friend. It's best for everyone if you cooperate. This big orchard can be dangerous. Albert eyed him coldly. You think intimidation works on me? Suddenly, Felicia rushed forward, tears streaming. She grabbed Albert's arm. Please, just sign. Then we'll figure out how to handle Bryce. You can't fight them all. Albert gently extricated himself from her grip, voice firm. No, Felicia. I don't cave to bullies. He turned to Bryce. If you want me to sign, it'll be in my office with a notary present. Let's go do that. Bryce hesitated, exchanging a glance with Todd. It was clear they hadn't planned to bring a notary, but Bryce forced a chuckle. Fine. Show the way. Albert led them toward the greenhouse rear door, into a side corridor that connected to the orchard. He quietly signaled Dennis with a subtle hand gesture. Reaching the orchard's edge, Todd hung back. Wait, I thought we were going to your office. Albert gestured. I keep some documents in a storage shed out here. Quick walk. Bryce frowned suspiciously but nodded. Felicia, trailing behind, was biting her lip so hard it might bleed. Abby quietly followed at a distance, phone filming discreetly. About halfway through the orchard's rows of young trees, Todd suddenly lunged at Albert with surprising speed. Enough stalling, he barked, trying to push Albert forward. Bryce stepped aside, letting Todd do the rough work. Felicia let out a horrified gasp. Albert pivoted, using Todd's momentum to sidestep. Todd stumbled, cursing. Bryce pulled out a small pistol from inside his jacket, leveling it at Albert. Abby gasped from behind a nearby trunk, filming everything. Bryce hissed, Sign the paper, or you'll have a tragic orchard accident right now. Understand? All the tension, all the careful planning came to fruition. Albert locked his gaze on the gun, analyzing Bryce's stance. He feigned a step backward, hands half raised. All right. No need for gunplay. Todd snorted. Smart move. He started to shove a pen into Albert's hand. In that instant, Albert dropped into a fluid motion, years of training unleashed. He slapped Todd's wrist away, twisting the pen free. The pen flew into the grass. Todd tried to punch him, but Albert ducked, hooking his leg behind Todd's ankle. With a forceful yank, Todd crashed to the ground. Bryce jerked the pistol up, but before he could fire, Albert lunged sideways. He grabbed the nearest orchard tool, a short pruning pole, swinging it to knock the gun from Bryce's grip. The firearm tumbled across the grass. Felicia screamed, pressing against a tree trunk, hands over her mouth. Abby, still filming, gawked in shock. Todd scrambled, reaching for the gun, but Albert whirled, hooking Todd's outstretched arm with the pruning pole, pinning him to the ground. Bryce tried to rush forward, but Albert delivered a swift, controlled strike across Bryce's jaw. Bryce staggered, eyes wide. In the orchard's green expanse, the confrontation reached a fever pitch. Todd pinned, Bryce reeling, Felicia sobbing, and Abby capturing every second on video. Albert stood firm, his improvised weapon in hand, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He'd laid bare their criminal threat, exposing both the scheme and their violent intentions. Yet the struggle wasn't over. Todd and Bryce were cornered, and dangerous criminals rarely surrendered easily. As the next moments unfolded, Albert would either solidify his victory and secure the evidence or face a last-ditch counterattack that might yet turn lethal. Chapter 5. Albert stood in the orchard's grass, a short pruning pole gripped in his right hand. Todd lay sprawled at his feet, pinned by the makeshift weapon, while Bryce stumbled back, nursing a red mark on his jaw where Albert's strike had landed. Beyond them, Felicia hovered in shock, eyes wet with tears, and Abby remained partially hidden, phone in hand, capturing every crucial second on video. A hush spread over the orchard's gentle rustle of leaves. The sweet smell of fresh grass and blossoms clashed bitterly with the violence in the air. Bryce let out a ragged exhale, then shot Todd a glare. "Get up," he barked. Todd grimaced, trying to push the pruning pole aside. Albert's stance remained firm, controlling the angle so Todd couldn't rise easily. After a tense moment, Albert yanked the pole away and sprang back a step, forcing Todd to scramble up, hands clenched. Bryce took a step to retrieve his fallen pistol, but Albert kicked it away beneath the low branches of a nearby pear tree. "You want me dead," Albert said quietly, "but I'm not so easy a target." Felicia stood near a trunk, stifling a sob. "Albert." He shifted his gaze her way for a moment, eyes conflicted. Then, focusing back on Bryce and Todd, he kept his posture ready. "One move, and I break your arms," he warned Todd. Bryce eyed him with cold fury. "This orchard is private. No one will see what happens if you resist. That insurance policy's in place. If you die here, it's a done deal." Abby couldn't hold back any longer. She emerged from behind a row of saplings, voice trembling but defiant. "The cameras see everything. I filmed you threatening him with a gun. Your plan is done." A flicker of alarm crossed Bryce's face. Todd spat. "Kid, you'd better back off if you know what's good for you." He flexed his shoulders, testing his range of motion. Albert took a slow breath, anticipating Todd's aggression. "I'd think carefully before attacking her," he said, voice tight with controlled anger. "You'll get nowhere near her." Trembling from head to toe, Felicia stepped out from her corner. Her voice cracked. "Bryce, you lied to me. You said it wouldn't be real, that you had ways to stage an accident that wouldn't implicate me. Now, you're threatening Albert at gunpoint." I can't do this." Bryce's eyes snapped to her, a scornful sneer twisting his lips. "Felicia, don't play innocent. You took my money. You gave me everything I needed to push that policy. You're in this as deep as any of us." Tears shimmered on her cheeks. "No. I refuse. I told you I'd help you trick the insurance company, not kill my husband. I'm calling the police." She fumbled for her phone, but Todd lunged forward, snatching it from her grasp. "Not so fast!" Felicia let out a sharp cry as Todd waved her phone in the air, panting from the adrenaline. Bryce flicked a glance at Todd, then at Abby, who still held her own phone. A swirl of tension coiled among them. At that moment, Dennis appeared at the orchard's edge. He'd come running when he heard a shout. His gaze swept the scene: Bryce's bruise, Todd's anger, Felicia's despair, Albert's wary stance, and Abby filming. "Albert," Dennis called, voice steady but urgent, "I can get help." Albert lifted a hand, signaling him to stand down. He spoke without shifting his gaze from Bryce or Todd. "Dennis, keep your distance. They're armed. Keep an eye out for any of their backup." Dennis looked unsure but nodded, stepping sideways to a vantage point behind a row of thicker trunks. Bryce's focus momentarily flitted to him, then back to Albert. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Birds chirped overhead, oblivious to the danger below. The orchard breeze rustled leaves, sending sun-dappled light across the tense group. Bryce inhaled, seemingly calculating. "Fine," he began, his voice regaining a veneer of calm. "We can settle this peacefully. Let's just walk away and forget what happened here. I'll drop the idea of a staged accident. Felicia, you can keep the deposit I gave you. We'll all let it go." Albert's eyes narrowed. "You think I believe that? You just threatened me with a gun. Todd tried to sabotage my greenhouse. I have footage. You'll walk free and come back later with more men." Todd scoffed, crossing his arms. "He's not going to believe you, Bryce. We should handle it now." A flicker of indecision crossed Bryce's face. "Handle it? Todd, we'd be facing murder charges. There's a camera on us right now," he hissed. Abby raised her phone pointedly. "Yes, you are on camera." Felicia found her voice, stepping a bit forward. "It's over, Bryce. Stop. I'll testify if needed. I can't let you hurt him." She cast a desperate glance at Albert, as if begging for some kind of forgiveness. Albert remained stoic, forcing himself to stay in the moment, to keep his vantage. "You should both put your hands up and wait for the police. That's your only chance." Todd spat on the ground. "No way. I'm not rotting in prison." His gaze flicked around, clearly searching for an escape route. "Bryce, we can fight our way out. That's what we do." Bryce shook his head, though not in denial, rather in agitation. He seemed to weigh Todd's words. "I told you I had one rule. Keep it clean. This fiasco isn't clean." Then his expression hardened. "But you forced my hand, Richards. Let's see if you're as tough as your old record suggests. Todd, do it." Todd sprang forward with startling speed, swinging a hidden blade from his waistband. Albert blocked with the pruning pole, steel scraping across metal. The orchard air filled with the shriek of clashing implements. Todd's strike was wild, fueled by desperation. Albert responded with trained precision, deflecting each slash. Abby gasped, stepping back to keep the filming steady. Dennis, further behind, called out, "Albert, watch your left!" Todd slashed again. Albert ducked under the arc, hooking Todd's elbow. The knife tumbled to the grass, but Todd drove forward, tackling Albert. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Bryce lunged for the fallen blade, but Felicia, in a surge of guilt-driven courage, kicked it away, sending it skittering near the pear tree. Enraged, Bryce backhanded Felicia, sending her reeling. Abby cried out, momentarily shifting her phone, but resumed capturing footage. Bryce scrambled over to the pear tree, rummaging for the discarded pistol amid scattered leaves. Meanwhile, Todd and Albert wrestled on the orchard floor. Todd tried to pin Albert's arms, but Albert twisted free, hooking Todd's leg in a scissor hold. With a grunt, Todd smacked the ground. Albert used the advantage to roll away, snatching the pruning pole. He scrambled upright, vantage gained. By the pear tree, Bryce let out a triumphant exclamation, brandishing the gun he'd finally found. He pivoted, aiming at the grappling men. "Enough, you!" Suddenly, Dennis rushed forward from behind a tree, a garden hoe in hand. Bryce spun, startled. Dennis smacked the hoe across Bryce's forearm. The gun fired a shot into the air, deafeningly loud. A flock of startled birds erupted from branches overhead. Bryce winced, dropping the pistol again as pain shot through his arm. Seizing the moment, Albert sprinted to Bryce. Todd, dazed on the ground, tried to rise but lost his balance. Bryce stumbled, clutching his throbbing forearm. Dennis kicked the pistol away with surprising agility for a man his age. Bryce glowered at them with a mixture of hatred and panic. You'll pay for this," he snarled, voice shaky. Albert picked up the pruning pole again, pointing it at Bryce's chest. "You threatened me, my staff, my wife, planted sabotage in my greenhouse. That's attempted murder. You think I'll let you walk away?" Todd, bruised and panting, crawled closer to Bryce. They eyed each other, adrenaline pumping. Felicia crept near Abby, chest heaving from sobs. Is it over?" she whispered. Abby carefully steadied her phone, eyes flicking from Bryce to Todd. "We have everything on camera. The shot might bring the police. They'll be here soon." Dennis stood guard over the pistol, wearing a determined expression. He pressed a foot on top of it, ensuring no one else could snatch it. The orchard felt as though time had stalled, everyone breathing heavily, hearts thumping, uncertain if violence would erupt again. Suddenly, they heard a roar of an engine from beyond the orchard fence. A battered black SUV barreled down the dirt path into the property. Dust kicked up around it. Albert's gut churned. More of Bryce's associates? A moment later, the SUV skidded to a stop near the orchard's edge. Out jumped two men, both thick-set, each scanning the orchard scene with purposeful intensity. One brandished a sidearm, the other carried an intimidating crowbar. They were obviously reinforcements, possibly from the same criminal network. Bryce's face lit with savage relief. "Ivan, over here!" he yelled. "Take them out!" Albert felt his pulse spike. They were outnumbered again. He cast a quick glance at Dennis, Abby, Felicia, and Todd, still halfway upright near Bryce. Could they hold off more armed thugs? The orchard was big, but their vantage was pinned. With a curt nod, the driver, apparently Ivan, commanded the second man forward. The second guy raised his handgun, stepping fast among the rows of orchard trees, trying to get a clear shot at Albert's group. Abby yelped, pulling Felicia behind a thick trunk for cover. Dennis ducked low, rolling the gun from under his foot, trying to push it away from the newly arrived aggressors. Albert, brandishing the pruning pole like a quarterstaff, dropped to a crouch. Todd saw a chance to scramble behind Bryce. Bryce gestured at the arrivals. "Shoot him!" he roared, pointing at Albert. The second thug fired, but the bullet whizzed wide, lodging in a tree trunk with a sharp crack. Leaves fluttered down, sap oozing from the impact. The orchard exploded in chaos. Felicia screamed. Abby clutched her phone with shaking hands. Dennis cursed under his breath, while Todd and Bryce tried to reposition. Albert dashed sideways, weaving behind orchard trunks. He recognized the orchard layout intimately. He'd planted half these trees himself. As the thug advanced, Albert circled around, using the heavy trunk for cover. Another shot rang out, splintering bark. Suddenly, a new voice shouted from the orchard entrance. "Freeze! Police!" Multiple squad cars slid to a stop behind the newly arrived SUV. Officers poured out, weapons drawn. The orchard scene lit up with red-blue flashing lights. Indeed, the earlier gunshot had alerted neighbors who called 911. Or perhaps neighbors had heard multiple commotions. The second thug pivoted to face the police. "Drop your weapons!" an officer yelled. Another bullet soared from the thug's gun, but the police responded with disciplined fire, forcing him to duck behind the SUV. The orchard crackled with tension as more officers fanned out, instructing everyone to get down. Ivan, teeth bared, realized the advantage had slipped away. He hissed at Bryce, "We gotta go, boss!" The men scrambled to re-enter the SUV. Todd limped after them. Bryce stumbled, arms still pained, but made a break for it. Albert sprinted out from behind a trunk. "Stop them!" he shouted to the officers. A couple of patrolmen dashed forward, intercepting Todd near the orchard fence. Todd threw a wild punch but was swiftly tackled to the ground. Another officer cornered Bryce, pressing him to the dusty path. The second thug tried to drive off but was blocked by a police cruiser, wheels spinning on grass. With guns leveled, the cops forced him out of the driver's seat. Ivan, stuck outside the SUV, raised his hands halfway, glowering. "We're unarmed now," he lied, even though a crowbar still dangled from one hand. The cops advanced, subduing him. With the orchard now overrun by law enforcement, the chaos settled into an organized flurry of arrests. Officers cuffed Bryce, Todd, Ivan, and the second thug, reading them their rights. The orchard felt surreal with swirling lights and shouting commands. Felicia, tears dried on her cheeks, emerged from behind the trunk with Abby. She locked eyes with Albert, voice trembling. "Albert, they'll want to question me. I did betray you, but I never wanted you dead. Albert's gaze flicked to the group of cuffed criminals. "I know, but you aided them. We'll see how that plays out legally." His tone was measured, but lacking warmth. "For now, do the right thing and tell the cops everything." She nodded, sorrow etched into her features. "I will. I'm sorry." Abby approached, still clutching her phone with the recorded footage. "Albert, I have everything they did. We can show the police." He offered a tight nod, gratitude shimmering in his tired eyes. "Good. Let's hand it over." An officer, noticing them, stepped closer. "Sir, ma'am, we need your statements. Are you all right?" Albert exhaled. "Yes. We're okay. We have evidence that these men attempted to kill me. We'll cooperate." He shot a glance at Felicia. She swallowed and stepped forward. Amid swirling squad car lights, sirens fading to a low hum, and the orchard's once peaceful rows now scattered with signs of struggle, the police took control. Bryce and his cronies were under arrest, Todd subdued, and the gun retrieved as evidence. Felicia hovered near Albert, not sure if she belonged at his side or in handcuffs. Abby stood strong, phone in hand, having played a crucial role in unveiling their conspiracy. The full fallout of Felicia's betrayal, Bryce's sabotage, and the criminal's infiltration had yet to unravel. But in that orchard, for the first time in weeks, Albert felt the immediate physical threat lifting a fragile sense of relief, tempered by heartbreak and anger. His gaze settled on Felicia. The consequences for her involvement would be severe, yet he couldn't deny the swirl of lingering emotions. He stepped aside to speak with the lead detective, uncertain of how much more pain or redemption would emerge from this day. Chapter 6. Under the watchful glare of fluorescent lights, Albert, Felicia, and Abby found themselves in a police station corridor. Hours had passed since the orchard standoff. They'd been taken in separate squad cars to file statements, with Dennis riding in another vehicle as a witness. Exhausted, Albert leaned against a dull beige wall, arms folded. His mind spun with everything: Bryce's direct attempt on his life, Todd's sabotage, Felicia's partial confession, and the unstoppable swirl of legal ramifications. Abby fidgeted by his side. "They took my phone to review the footage. They said I'd get it back soon," she whispered, uneasy about relinquishing her key evidence. Albert gave a small nod. "It's standard procedure. We need that footage to convict them. The cops will copy it as evidence." Felicia sat in a plastic chair across from them, eyes downcast. She'd given her initial statement, haltingly recounting how she'd become entangled in Bryce's scheme. Now she waited to be interviewed again, uncertain if she faced charges too. Eventually, Detective Morales, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, emerged from behind a battered office door. She beckoned Albert. "Mr. Richards, come in, please. We have a few more questions." Albert exchanged a glance with Abby and Felicia, then followed Morales into a small interrogation room. Harsh overhead lighting illuminated a metal table with 2 chairs. Morales motioned for him to sit, then settled across from him. She flipped open a folder. We have multiple suspects in custody: Bryce Volkov, Todd Edwards, Ivan Rogov, and Kevin Harlow. Preliminary charges include attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, illegal possession of firearms, conspiracy, and more. We also have reason to believe they've committed insurance fraud across state lines. We're contacting federal authorities. Albert remained calm. I can confirm Bryce orchestrated a deadly plan. He tried to force me to sign an insurance amendment, threatened me with a gun. Todd sabotaged my greenhouse to create a lethal accident. Detective Morales nodded. We've reviewed some of the video Ms. Abby took. It's clear they intended harm. However, there's also footage showing your wife, Felicia, discussing involvement with Bryce. She admitted to certain things, yes? Albert's expression darkened. Felicia initially claimed Bryce convinced her it was just a scheme to cheat the insurance company, not kill me. She might have realized too late how serious he was. I don't know if that absolves her. Morales studied him. We'll handle that. She may face conspiracy charges depending on how willingly she participated. For now, we're verifying her statements. Albert leaned forward. Detective, I want them Bryce and Todd prosecuted to the fullest. They threatened the staff at my shop, tried to kill me. Felicia, if she helped them, I won't stand in the way of charges. Morales closed the folder. Understood. We'll keep you updated. Thank you for your cooperation. After Albert stepped out, Felicia was brought in for her second interview. She wore the same clothes, stained with orchard dust, eyes hollow from crying. Abby gave her a small nod of encouragement, though she wasn't sure if Felicia deserved it. Inside the interview room, Detective Morales sat across from Felicia, expression neutral. Mrs. Richards, you've stated you accepted money from Bryce Volkov, believing it was for a mere insurance scam with no lethal outcome. Please elaborate. Felicia fidgeted with her blouse hem. He approached me after a real estate networking event, offered financial help for my business if I could push Albert to buy more coverage. I was naive or maybe just greedy. I never intended for Albert to be harmed. But once I realized Bryce wanted an actual accident, I tried to back out. He threatened me, said he had connections that would ruin my life or worse. Morales tapped a pen. So you continued feeding him details about your husband's schedule, the greenhouse layout, correct? Felicia swallowed hard. Yes. At first I thought it was just to fool the insurance underwriters. Then Todd showed up. They said the orchard was ideal for a staged accident. I was in over my head. Please believe me, I wanted to stop, but Bryce blackmailed me. He had photos, threatened to reveal I was complicit. Morales scrutinized her. We'll see if your timeline matches the evidence. Did you or did you not sign that final policy and push your husband to sign the amendment that specifically enabled the large payout upon his accidental death? Tears brimmed. I did. But only because Bryce forced me. I truly didn't want Albert dead. I made a terrible choice. Morales sighed, scribbling notes. Prosecutors will decide how much credit to give your cooperation. For now, remain available. Understood? Felicia nodded numbly. Back in the corridor, Felicia emerged from her interview shaken. She sank into the plastic chair, hugging herself. Albert avoided her gaze. Abby stood between them, an awkward buffer. Soon, an officer returned Abby's phone. She quickly checked to see if the orchard footage was intact. They copied it? The officer said, and we'll use it as evidence. Thanks for your help. Abby exhaled relief. Good. She turned to Albert. What happens now? Albert rubbed the back of his neck. We give full statements. The district attorney will press charges against Bryce and the rest. Might be a trial. Meanwhile, He glanced momentarily at Felicia. We figure out if Felicia will be charged as well. Felicia's eyes welled again. She mustered a whisper. Albert, I'm so sorry. Let me talk to you, please. He wavered, then sighed, motioning to a quieter corner. In that corner, Felicia's words spilled out in a rushed half-whisper. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know I never imagined they'd truly kill you. Bryce promised it was just a trick. I was desperate for money. You never told me about your finances or how you were doing with the shop's expansions. I made a stupid assumption we were drowning. Albert's jaw tightened. And you went behind my back? Collaborated with a criminal? Tears streamed down her cheeks. I can't defend it. I was selfish, short-sighted. But the moment I realized they planned to sabotage the greenhouse, I tried to contact you or back out or do something. Then Todd threatened me again. I was stuck, afraid, believing Bryce's claims that you'd be fine. He closed his eyes briefly, wrestling with emotions. She was his wife, someone he once deeply loved. Yet her betrayal cut deep. The orchard confrontation proved how wrong you were. She sobbed. I know. And I stepped in. I tried to knock the knife away. I told them I wouldn't let them kill you. Does that mean anything? Albert inhaled slowly. It means you found a shred of conscience at the end. That might help your legal case. Felicia's face twisted in anguish. Albert, I don't want to lose you forever. He stared at the floor. This isn't something I can just forget. Let's get through the investigation. The rest, we'll see. After hours of statements, the police finally released them with instructions to remain available for further questioning. Stepping into the station's lobby, Albert, Felicia, and Abby were greeted by a sudden barrage of reporters. Word of the orchard shootout and arrests had spread fast. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. Mr. Richards, is it true your wife conspired to kill you for insurance money? Someone shouted. Another reporter hollered, Felicia, how could you plot your husband's death? Felicia's face went pale. She shrank back, tears forming anew. Abby bristled, stepping protectively near her. Albert scowled, raising an arm to block the cameras. No comment. Back off. A wave of chaotic questions followed, but the trio muscled through the throng. An officer escorted them to a side exit. Once outside, they breathed a harsh sigh of relief, only to find more press vehicles assembling. Dennis arrived, pulling up in his old sedan. Get in! Quick! He urged. They piled into the car, ignoring flashbulbs that lit the twilight. Dennis drove them away from the station. Dennis dropped them at Albert's house. Evening shadows stretched across the porch where Felicia had once eagerly arranged potted flowers. The tension felt suffocating. Abby lingered by the front walkway, uncertain. I can head home. Let you two talk. Albert cleared his throat. Actually, Abby, maybe you should come in. I want you to hear what's next. Felicia, trailing behind, fidgeted with her keys. Are we staying here together? Albert stepped inside, flicking on a lamp. The living room felt strangely foreign after the day's drama. You can stay if you want, but we have to talk about boundaries. Legally, you might be charged with conspiracy. I'm not going to sabotage your defense, but I also can't pretend everything is okay. Felicia's shoulders slumped. I understand. Abby set down her bag, scanning the neat space. She'd rarely come to the house outside special occasions. An uneasy hush reigned. Albert turned to Felicia, voice quiet yet resolute. Tomorrow I'm meeting with an attorney. We both should. The company insurance you manipulated with Bryce is definitely void now. Besides, it's evidence in a criminal case. Our finances, we can unravel that in time. Felicia swallowed. I want to help the police with full disclosure. Maybe that'll earn me leniency. As for us, I know we may never... She trailed off, tears returning. Albert's gaze flickered with sorrow and anger. I loved you for years, but this betrayal, it's changed everything. If you truly want to fix anything, cooperate fully. Right now, the best you can do is be honest. Abby listened quietly, fighting sympathy for Felicia. She recalled how Felicia had guided her in small ways around the greenhouse months before, seemed so put together. Now, undone by greed and fear. Finally, Abby cleared her throat, stepping forward. Mr. Richards Albert, I want to keep working at Greenhaven. I'll stand by you through the trial or depositions or whatever. We can't let the business be overshadowed by this scandal. Albert met her gaze, giving a small, grateful nod. I'd appreciate that, Abby. Your quick thinking with the camera, you saved me. Thank you. She blushed slightly. You gave me a place at the shop, taught me so much. Couldn't let them get away with hurting you. Or Felicia, to be honest. Felicia murmured, Thank you, Abby. I know I don't deserve kindness. Abby just nodded, no further words. Night settled heavily over the Richards home. Felicia retreated to the guest bedroom, her soul weighed by guilt and uncertainty. Albert sat in the quiet living room with Abby, both mentally and emotionally exhausted. Despite the Orchard confrontation's resolution, the legal storm loomed large. A swirl of media scrutiny, potential charges, depositions, and moral reckoning awaited them. But at least for the moment, Albert was alive, free from immediate danger, and Bryce's network had been dismantled in a single, tumultuous day. As the hush of late evening crept in, the question pulsed. Could they rebuild normalcy after such betrayal, or had the final wedge been driven irreparably between them? Chapter 7. Over the next week, Albert's life became a flurry of legal meetings. He hired Lucia Henderson, a tough-minded local defense attorney recommended by an old friend. She specialized in fraud and conspiracy cases. Though Albert was not charged with wrongdoing, he needed representation to handle depositions and any cross-accusations. Early Monday, Lucia arrived at Greenhaven's small office. She perched on a chair across from Albert, scanning documents he'd spread across the desk copies of the insurance policy, Felicia's bank statements, screenshots of Bryce's threats. All quite damning, Lucia said, flipping a page. The district attorney will appreciate your thoroughness. They might subpoena you as a star witness. Albert sighed. I'm ready. I just want them locked up. Abby stood near the door, listening quietly. She'd told Lucia what she witnessed and turned over her footage. Lucia nodded in approval. Your employee's testimony and the video are key. The Orchard confrontation was blatant attempted murder. Meanwhile, Felicia had secured her own lawyer, Caroline Hunt, a silver-haired attorney with a reputation for handling messy divorces and mild criminal defense. Caroline requested a meeting at her downtown office. Nervously twisting her purse straps, Felicia entered the sleek, modern space. Caroline offered a handshake. Ms. Richards, let's discuss how deep your involvement goes. The prosecution might see you as a co-conspirator. Felicia's voice shook. I never wanted Albert dead. Bryce manipulated me, threatened me. Caroline studied her carefully. The law says, if you knowingly aided in planning or encouraging any crime, you can be charged. However, if you cooperated with the police, that can mitigate. Let me see your statements. As they pored over Felicia's timeline, Caroline's expression turned grave. You're not out of the woods, but we can angle for a plea deal if you continue cooperating. Felicia nodded, tears prickling. I'll do anything to show I wasn't a willing accomplice. Outside official channels, the media latched on to the sensational narrative. Garden shop murder plot, headlines blared. Photos of the Orchard standoff circulated. Cable news teased the story of a cheating wife's betrayal, though Felicia's sexual infidelity was never alleged, only financial wrongdoing. Yet tabloids didn't let facts hamper their spin. Greenhaven found itself besieged by curious onlookers. Some expressed support for Albert, praising him for surviving an attempted murder. Others whispered that Felicia was a cunning gold digger. Dennis tried to shield staff from intrusive questions, but business took a hit from the negative publicity. Abby, outraged by tabloids, quietly reminded Albert that once the trial ended, the truth would come out. He gave a weary nod, wishing the noise would fade sooner. Lucia arranged a preliminary meeting with the district attorney Gail Thompson to clarify charges. They entered the downtown courthouse, ascending marble steps. Thompson, a brisk woman with wire-rimmed glasses, received them in her tidy office. Thompson greeted them, then cut to the chase. "Mr. Richards, we're pressing attempted murder charges against Bryce Volkoff and Todd Edwards plus conspiracy and extortion. The other two men from the Orchard face lesser assault charges. We also have potential ties to interstate insurance fraud." Albert sat stiffly. "That's good. And Felicia? Where do you stand with her?" Thompson pursed her lips. "We're evaluating. She's been forthcoming. However, the evidence suggests she knowingly contributed for some period. She could be indicted. That depends on how vital her testimony is to securing the main convictions." Lucia tapped her pen. "We want to ensure Albert's safety and the Orchard's reputation are taken into account. If Felicia's partial involvement can expedite conviction for the real masterminds, that might be beneficial for the prosecution." Thompson nodded. "Yes, we might offer her a reduced charge or probation if she fully cooperates. But I can't promise yet." Albert exhaled, torn. He wanted justice for Bryce's betrayal. But seeing Felicia behind bars weighed on him, conflicting him more than he expected. Late one evening, Felicia knocked on the door of the greenhouse office. She'd moved out temporarily, staying with an acquaintance, yet she often hovered near, hoping to speak with Albert. He looked up from paperwork. "Yes?" She stepped inside, wringing her hands. "Albert, I heard the DA might charge me. I asked my lawyer to push for a plea. I just want you to know I'm sorry, truly. And I still love you. If there's any chance we can—" Albert set down his pen. "Felicia, I'm dealing with 1,000 things. The Orchard's repairs, legal depositions, damage control for the shop's reputation. As for us, I can't handle that now." Her eyes glistened. "I understand. Maybe after the trial ends we can talk. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." He shook his head slowly. "I can't promise anything. You hurt me in ways I never thought possible. That said, if you genuinely help convict Bryce, it might count for something." She gave a shaky nod. "I will. Thank you." A few days later, a letter arrived at Greenhaven's mailbox, bearing the return address of the county jail. Albert eyed it warily. Inside, he found a scrawled note from Bryce. The gist: "Albert, you think you've won by locking me up, but my network runs deeper. I have allies who won't let me rot here. This is just a delay. If you drop your statement, I'll keep them off your back. Otherwise, watch your steps." Bryce Albert felt a surge of anger reading the threat. He showed it to Abby and Dennis. Dennis's face darkened. The nerve of him. Abby asked quietly, "Should we forward this to the DA?" Albert nodded. "Yes, this is intimidation. Another reason to keep up my guard." He couldn't deny a ripple of unease. Bryce, behind bars, might still reach out to unscrupulous enforcers. Another reminder that the danger wasn't wholly gone. Late one afternoon, Wayne Albert's old contact, who first warned him about Bryce's Russian ties, showed up at Greenhaven unannounced, wearing a casual jacket that didn't quite hide his military bearing. Abby recognized him from prior fleeting mentions. In the back office, Wayne shook Albert's hand. Heard your orchard turned into a small war zone. You okay? Albert managed a faint smile. We survived. Bryce is locked up, but still menacing from jail. Abby caught it all on camera. The DA has a solid case. Wayne nodded. Good. Meanwhile, I did some digging. Bryce had deeper connections to ex-GRU circles. They lost big money in a smuggling ring years ago. Some blame you for that. That's likely why they targeted you specifically with an insurance scam. He also had a personal vendetta, perhaps. Albert grimaced. So it wasn't random. He wanted revenge disguised as a murder for profit. Wayne sighed. Yes, and some old players might still harbor ill will. Just be vigilant. Albert's jaw set. I will. Thanks, Wayne. If you hear anything, let me know. After receiving Bryce's threatening letter and Wayne's warnings, the local police assigned occasional patrols near Green Haven, especially after closing hours. Albert also upgraded the shop's security system, more cameras, motion-activated alarms. Dennis assisted, quietly joking about turning the garden shop into a fortress. Albert insisted it was necessary. I can't risk staff safety. If any more criminals show up, we'll be ready. Abby bravely offered to handle extra shifts, wanting to keep an eye on the place. Albert insisted she not do so alone. They arranged a rotating schedule with Dennis and a newly hired assistant named Natalie, who had no idea the place had nearly been the site of homicide. Weeks rolled by. The DA set a preliminary hearing date. Bryce, Todd, and the other men faced multiple felonies. Felicia's lawyer negotiated behind the scenes. She was told she'd likely need to testify against Bryce in open court. Albert, too, prepared to testify. Lucia coached him. Be calm, Factual. The orchard footage is powerful. Let the evidence speak. Don't let Bryce's defense rattle you with personal attacks. Albert nodded grimly, recalling Bryce's letter. I won't be rattled. I just want him put away. Felicia's mood remained pensive. She visited the greenhouse less and less, feeling unwelcome. Whenever she did come, she'd ask Abby if Albert might ever speak kindly to her again. Abby, uncertain, would gently say he needed time. Under the surface calm, tensions brewed. Bryce's network threatened retaliation. Felicia hovered between guilt and hope for leniency, and Albert soldiered on, determined to protect his business and employees. The orchard had been cleaned up, bullet-scarred tree trunks pruned, but the scars of betrayal lingered. As the court date loomed, the next showdown moved from orchard brawling to a legal battlefield. Albert steeled himself for cross-examination, uncertain how far Bryce's allies might go to subvert justice. He glimpsed Felicia at the greenhouse threshold one afternoon, a longing expression on her face. Yet he only offered a curt nod, unable to erase the pain that had lodged in his chest. In the hush of each evening, with new security cameras blinking in readiness, Albert wondered if true peace was even possible. The story was far from concluded. Finally, the day of the preliminary hearing arrived. The county courthouse bustled with lawyers, reporters, and onlookers. In a dimly lit corridor outside the courtroom, Albert stood with Lucia. Nearby, Felicia and her lawyer, Caroline, whispered anxiously. Abby, Dennis, and Wayne were there to provide moral support. Inside, Bryce, Todd, and the other two indicted men would face the judge to confirm if enough evidence existed for a full trial. They were escorted in wearing orange jumpsuits, glowering at the assembled witnesses. When the bailiff called the hearing to order, the small gallery quieted. The judge, an older man named Judge Collins, adjusted his glasses, scanning the docket. District Attorney Gail Thompson rose, outlining the charges. Attempted murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, extortion, assault with deadly weapons. She recounted how Bryce and Todd deliberately plotted Albert's death to collect insurance money. Abby's orchard footage was introduced as Exhibit 1. The courtroom lights dimmed briefly as a monitor displayed select clips. Todd tinkering at the greenhouse sprayer, Bryce threatening Albert with a pistol. Gasps rippled among the spectators. Thompson concluded, "The video alone suffices to demonstrate probable cause. They intended to kill Mr. Richards. Additional testimony from Ms. Felicia Richards corroborates this plot." Caroline guided Felicia to the stand. Felicia, voice trembling, recounted her interactions with Bryce, the initial promise of financial gain, her naivety, then the realization that Bryce meant actual harm. She admitted feeding him details of Albert's schedule and greenhouse layout under duress and misguided greed. Thompson carefully asked, "Ms. Richards, did you sign any documents or policies facilitating an increased payout upon your husband's accidental death?" Felicia's cheeks burned with shame. "Yes, I did, on Bryce's instruction. I believed it was a fraudulent scheme, not murder." The defense attorney for Bryce, a slick man named Owen Pierce, cross-examined Felicia. "Isn't it true you willingly accepted large sums of money from my client, never questioning his methods?" She hesitated, tears forming. "I questioned him eventually. He threatened me. I was scared." Pierce sneered. "So convenient to claim fear now." Caroline objected, and the judge sustained, instructing Pierce to keep it relevant. Felicia's shaky voice continued, verifying Todd's sabotage. Next, Albert took the stand. Lucia guided him calmly. He described the orchard confrontation, the sabotage discovered, and how Bryce forcibly tried to make him sign an insurance amendment. Thompson displayed photos of the orchard with bullet impacts, referencing the orchard footage. "Mr. Richards, was there any doubt in your mind they intended lethal harm?" Albert's voice rang firm. "None. They brandished weapons, threatened me. Todd specifically rigged toxic chemicals in my greenhouse. The orchard confrontation sealed it. Bryce pointed a gun at me." Pierce's cross-examination tried to sow confusion. "Weren't you a former operative, Mr. Richards? Didn't your own skill escalate the violence?" Albert leveled a stare. "I only defended myself. They attacked first." Pierce pressed, "Isn't it possible you recognized Bryce from prior dealings in covert circles and orchestrated a fight?" Lucia objected, calling it speculative. The judge sustained. Albert gave short, factual replies, refusing to be goaded. Abby was next, though her testimony was brief. She confirmed filming the orchard standoff, identifying Bryce's voice threatening to kill Albert if he didn't sign. She pointed out Todd's sabotage. The video was replayed in key sections. Pierce tried to challenge the authenticity of the footage, but the prosecution had chain of custody records. The judge found it compelling. Finally, Bryce's counsel attempted to cast doubt. Owen Pierce argued, "My client believed it was a theatrical demonstration for an unorthodox insurance project. Mr. Richards escalated with violence. The orchard incident was an unfortunate misunderstanding." Todd's lawyer parroted a similar line, claiming Todd never intended murder, just a harmless sabotage demonstration. The orchard's gunshots were self-defense, but the orchard footage contradicted these claims. The judge frowned as repeated clips showed Todd lunging with a knife, Bryce brandishing the gun, and Felicia screaming. After hearing arguments, Judge Collins rubbed his temples. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Finally, he announced his decision. The evidence, including videotape, witness testimonies, and confessions, clearly indicates probable cause for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and associated charges. We will proceed to trial. A surge of relief and murmurs spread through the gallery. Bryce glowered, shooting Albert a venomous glare. Todd slumped, resigned. Bryce's lawyer requested bail, but the judge denied it, calling them a flight risk. Todd's counsel tried the same, also denied. The men were led away in cuffs, more hateful looks cast in Albert's direction. Outside the courtroom, reporters clamored. Abby, Dennis, Felicia, and Albert fought their way past cameras. Lucia gave a brief statement. "We're satisfied the case proceeds. My client cooperated fully. Justice will be served." Felicia, eyes red, avoided reporters. She pulled Albert aside. "The DA said they might not charge me if I keep testifying. I know that doesn't fix us, but—" Albert nodded, voice taut with exhaustion. "It's good you're making amends. Keep cooperating." She touched his arm timidly. He didn't pull away, but neither did he return the gesture. "I need time," was all he said. Abby lingered near, offering silent support. Wayne quietly departed, satisfied the legal system was in motion. With the preliminary hearing behind them, Albert returned to the greenhouse. He found the orchard calmer now, late afternoon sun streaming through leaves. Dennis greeted him. "How'd it go?" Albert recapped the success of the hearing. Then he walked among the orchard's rows, checking on the once bullets-scarred trees. Some bark had healed, though scars remained. The orchard echoed his own heart, damaged but still standing. Abby approached with a gentle smile. "You okay?" He shrugged. "I will be. The orchard's regrowing. So can I, maybe?" She nodded, letting him have a moment of reflection. In the wake of the hearing, Bryce remained behind bars. Todd, too. Felicia cooperated with the DA, balancing on a legal tightrope between full exoneration and potential minor charges. The orchard, no longer a war zone, thrived under the late summer sun, symbolizing resilience. Yet the deeper question, Albert's emotional path forward, lingered. Would he mend fences with Felicia, or finalize a separation? Could Green Haven restore its good name after sensational headlines? The looming trial promised a final reckoning. For now, relief mingled with the weight of unresolved endings. As the last shards of daylight filtered through orchard leaves, Albert closed his eyes, grateful to be alive, but aware that closure awaited in a courtroom, where final judgment on betrayal and attempted murder would come to pass. The journey wasn't over. One more step remained before he could truly call his life his own again. Chapter 9. A brisk autumn wind rustled the half-bare trees around Green Haven one morning as Albert stood near the greenhouse, absently rubbing the scarring on a pear tree, a remnant of the orchard showdown. It had been several weeks since the preliminary hearing, and the official trial was set to begin soon. In the intervening days, he and Abby had poured energy into stabilizing the business. Despite sensational media coverage, many loyal customers returned, offering sympathetic smiles and supportive words. A small cluster of reporters still hovered around, hoping for a last-minute scoop. Felicia, living in a modest rental unit across town, emailed Albert sporadic updates on her ongoing negotiations with the district attorney. Her remorse was evident, but Albert remained guarded. Lucia, Albert's steely attorney, meticulously helped him finalize testimony details. She was determined to counter any last-ditch tricks Bryce's defense might employ. Meanwhile, the district attorney's office shared glimpses of evidence gleaned from digital records, emails, phone logs, bank transfers, all linking Bryce to broader insurance fraud rings. Late each night, Albert found himself reviewing orchard footage and old text messages. The final step standing in a public courtroom felt surreal. But he knew it was the only path to put Bryce away and reclaim normalcy. Across town, in her small, sparsely furnished apartment, Felicia paced beside a window that looked onto a busy street. The staccato hum of passing cars seemed to amplify her own anxious pulse. Caroline Hunt, her defense lawyer, had outlined the precarious position Felicia faced. The D. Hay was willing to recommend a reduced charge, Perhaps aiding and abetting a fraud conspiracy rather than attempted murder, provided Felicia testified openly against Bryce and Todd, leaving no detail unspoken. Each night, Felicia wrestled with guilt. She replayed how she'd fed Bryce insider knowledge, that one impulsive decision to accept his money. She'd compromised not only her integrity, but nearly cost Albert his life. Sometimes she scrolled through photos from happier times, her wedding to Albert, earlier days in the greenhouse with bright flowers around them. The heartbreak was deeper now, knowing she might never repair the damage, even if she avoided prison. In fleeting phone calls to Albert, she tried to express gratitude for him not outright condemning her. He rarely said much, simply ending calls with a polite, "Take care." Those clipped words told her he was beyond easy forgiveness. One crisp evening, as Albert closed up the greenhouse, Wayne arrived unannounced. He'd parked discreetly and stepped inside, taking stock of the shop's newly expanded security cameras and reinforced locks. "Looks like a fortress," Wayne remarked with a half-smile, removing his jacket. "Good call. Bryce is behind bars, but that might not stop certain accomplices from stirring trouble." Albert nodded, offering him a seat near the potting bench. "I'd rather be safe. What's the latest on Bryce's external ties?" Wayne exhaled, folding his arms. His influence in that ex-GRU circle was smaller than he boasted. Most of them cut ties once he got arrested, not wanting to draw law enforcement attention. However, a few minor henchmen remain free, presumably in hiding. "I doubt they'll risk a direct confrontation, but remain vigilant." Abby hovered by the door, quietly absorbing the conversation. Wayne gave her a respectful nod. "You're the one who filmed the orchard scene, right?" "Good job. That footage will be crucial." She managed a polite smile. "Just did what had to be done. I hope the trial finishes them for good." Before leaving, Wayne pulled Albert aside. "When you take the stand, don't let them bait you about your past. Keep it strictly on Bryce's wrongdoing. If you sense any intimidation from unknown parties, let me know." Albert thanked him, determined to protect himself and those around him from any lingering threats. A few days later, the trial's jury selection commenced at the county courthouse. The building's tall marble columns and echoing hallways heightened tensions as prospective jurors filed in. Bryce, clad in an ironed but ill-fitting suit, sat next to Owen Pierce, his defense attorney. Todd remained stoic beside his own counsel. The two lesser accomplices stared blankly. The prosecution, led by D.A. Gail Thompson, grilled potential jurors about their views on insurance fraud, armed violence, and hidden conspiracies. The defense tried to weed out anyone who seemed too sympathetic to law enforcement. During recess, reporters scrawled notes, capturing any small detail like Bryce's cold stare at the panel or the faint flush on Todd's face whenever sabotage was mentioned. Lucia confided to Albert that the defense aimed to frame the orchard conflict as a misunderstanding or a civil insurance dispute that spiraled, painting Albert as paranoid or overreactive. Lucia planned a thorough strategy to let the orchard footage and Felicia's testimony shine. By the end of 2 tense days, a 12-person jury was selected, men and women from varied backgrounds, each sworn to fairness. Bryce watched them with a thin smile that never reached his eyes. On the trial's first official day, the courtroom filled early. Felicia sat near the front, flanked by Caroline. Abby and Dennis found seats behind Albert, offering unspoken support. After the judge's formalities, D.A. Thompson delivered the opening statement. She recounted the cunning plot, Bryce and Todd's infiltration of Green Haven, the orchestrated sabotage, the orchard showdown, and the dire motive, a multi-million-dollar insurance payout. "We will show you clear evidence from multiple cameras, from the victim's own recollection, and from Ms. Felicia Richards's admissions, Thompson declared. This was no accident, but a premeditated murder attempt, Pierce countered, labeling it an overblown narrative, claiming the orchard footage was taken out of context and that Felicia's involvement signaled mere insurance scamming, not lethal intent. He hinted at Mr. Richards's secretive past, implying a personal vendetta shaped the orchard confrontation. Albert, seated behind the prosecution table, clenched his fists, recalling Wayne's warning. He resolved to remain calm, let the facts speak. During a lunch break, Felicia's lawyer Caroline pulled her aside in a quiet alcove. The DA wants you to testify tomorrow as a key witness. This will finalize your cooperation. Felicia's stomach churned. She realized testifying openly meant admitting her wrongdoing in front of a public gallery, the jury, and most painfully Albert. Yet the alternative could be harsh charges. "I'm prepared," Felicia murmured, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I have to do this. Even if it means they see me as a terrible person, at least I'll help put Bryce and Todd away." Caroline gently squeezed her shoulder. "That's the spirit. And if the DA sees your sincerity, we'll push for reduced sentencing or probation. But you mustn't hold anything back." Felicia exhaled shakily, eyes momentarily misty. "I won't. I owe it to Albert, to everyone." The next morning, with the courtroom hushed, the prosecution called Albert as the first major witness. Dressed in a crisp suit, he moved to the witness stand, Lucia nodding reassuringly from her seat. Thompson's direct examination led him through the storyline, meeting Bryce, noticing suspicious insurance interest, discovering sabotage, culminating in the orchard confrontation. Projected on a large screen, images of bullet holes in orchard tree bark and the greenhouse's tampered sprayer system underscored each point. Albert's voice stayed calm, though his throat tightened when they played the orchard video snippet showing Bryce pointing a pistol. His memory of that day's fear and adrenaline nearly stirred an outburst, but he remained collected. He recalled Todd lunging, Bryce's chilling ultimatum, and Felicia's frantic pleas. Then came Pierce's cross-examination. The defense lawyer tried casting doubt. "You were once a special operative, correct? Couldn't your own paranoia have fueled an overreaction?" Lucia objected to the relevance. The judge allowed limited questioning. Albert answered firmly, "My background doesn't negate the fact that Bryce threatened me with a firearm. Todd rigged lethal chemicals. I never sought them out. They invaded my life." Pierce tried to push the narrative that Felicia orchestrated everything, playing on marital drama. Albert refused to support that speculation, repeating that Bryce was the ringleader. After a short recess, Felicia was called. Pale but resolute, she approached the stand. Sworn in, she glanced at Albert fleetingly, then addressed Thompson's questions. She recounted the early deception, Bryce luring her with financial promises, how she rationalized the harmless fraud, and then realized the dark intent. "When Todd showed up, I saw it was more than a scam. They spoke of making the orchard an accident zone. That's when I panicked." Her voice quavered, describing her final confrontation in the orchard. She admitted passing Albert's schedule to Bryce, enabling Todd's sabotage. "I was desperate. I never meant for my husband to die," she repeated, tears in her eyes. Pierce's cross-examination pounced. "So you were complicit, Mrs. Richards. You, not my client, created the entire scenario?" Felicia steadied herself. "No. Bryce initiated the plan. I agreed to help, yes, but only under his manipulations. When I realized it was real murder, I tried to stop it." She detailed the threats Bryce made, referencing text messages. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Even some jurors showed empathy for Felicia's remorse. Pierce seemed frustrated. This was a far cry from the defense's attempts to paint her as a mastermind. Outside the courthouse, During a break, Felicia and Albert found themselves alone by a vending machine. She'd been dismissed from the stand, tears still glistening. He observed her shaking hand as she struggled to insert coins for water. Wordlessly, Albert offered a spare bottle from his bag. She hesitated, then accepted it, whispering, "Thank you." They stood in awkward silence. Felicia finally spoke. "I'm sorry you had to hear all that in open court." Albert looked away, jaw tensed. "We needed the truth. It hurt, but you did the right thing." She stared at the scuffed tiles underfoot. "I know our marriage might be over. I wouldn't blame you." He swallowed. "I will see. One step at a time. For now, just focus on seeing this through." A tiny glimmer of hope flickered in her eyes, but she nodded. "Yes, I will." Then they parted ways, each returning to their respective seats inside. With Felicia's emotional testimony on record, the trial accelerated. The orchard footage, combined with multiple first-hand accounts, painted a damning portrait of Bryce's violent scheme. Todd's half-hearted claims of ignorance crumbled under cross-examination. Albert, while still reeling from Felicia's betrayal, acknowledged her crucial role in sealing the prosecution's case. As gavel taps ended the day's session, spectators whispered that Bryce's conviction felt inevitable. Yet final verdicts awaited. Tense cross-examinations, defense summations, and possibly last-minute twists loomed. And though the trial neared its conclusion, the question of how Albert and Felicia might navigate the aftermath remained as uncertain as ever. Chapter 10. By the start of the trial's second week, the defense scrambled to salvage Bryce's image. Pierce called a couple of character witnesses who claimed Bryce was a savvy businessman, never violent. But cross-examination revealed they were associates with questionable backgrounds, diminishing their credibility. For Todd, his attorney tried a duress angle, arguing Todd was forced by Bryce to sabotage the greenhouse. However, orchard video and text messages showed Todd's enthusiastic participation, undermining that claim. The jury seemed visibly unimpressed. Meanwhile, the prosecution lined up forensic experts explaining how the greenhouse sprayer had been tampered with a toxic chemical feed, highlighting Todd's deliberate intent. Mid-trial, D.A. Thompson introduced a trove of Bryce's private emails recovered from his laptop. They included ominous subject lines referencing accident schedules, attachments with partial floor plans of Green Haven, and references to maximizing coverage. An especially damning chain showed Bryce emailing Todd, "Ensure the orchard is ready. No loose ends." The date matched days before the orchard standoff. Pierce objected vigorously, calling them unverified, but forensic specialists testified to the digital integrity. The judge allowed them. The jury's reaction was telling. They read the text of each message on a large screen, absorbing the premeditation. Off the stand now, Felicia mostly watched the proceedings from a side bench near Caroline. Each new revelation of Bryce's detailed plans to kill Albert stirred her guilt anew. She realized how close the fiasco came to actual tragedy. Sometimes she glanced at Albert, trying to gauge his state of mind. He never refused to look at her, but the gulf between them felt vast. When court adjourned daily, she'd stand outside, half hoping he'd speak, half ashamed of her role. The prospect of leniency or probation if the DA cut her a deal offered some relief. Yet a deeper question haunted her. Even if she avoided jail, what life awaited her if Albert wanted a divorce? Or if the entire community viewed her as a near-murderous spouse? In the midst of trial chaos, Abby tried keeping Green Haven afloat. She reassured curious customers that Albert was temporarily at court but still overseeing operations from afar. Dennis continued day-to-day tasks, greeting loyal patrons with polite smiles. One afternoon, Abby found Felicia alone in the corridor outside the courtroom, tears sliding down her cheeks. Feeling a pang of sympathy, Abby approached gently. "Mrs. Richards," Abby began, recalling Felicia's one-time mentorship. "I know you messed up, but it took courage to testify, and I see you're genuinely remorseful." Felicia sniffed, nodding. "Thank you for not hating me. I appreciate what you and Albert did, even if I didn't deserve it." Abby patted her shoulder hesitantly. "We're all just trying to see the truth come out, so we can heal. Maybe, in time, you can find a way forward, whatever that looks like." Midweek, Todd insisted on testifying in hopes of explaining away his orchard actions. His defense lawyer claimed Todd lacked full mental capacity to understand the lethal nature, labeling him a gullible pawn. Yet under cross-examination, the DA produced text messages where Todd boasted about turning the orchard into a death trap. Todd's face fell. He stammered, "It was just bravado, I never meant real harm." The jury's skeptical expressions spoke volumes. The orchard footage overshadowed any claims of misunderstanding. Even Todd's attempt to shift blame to Felicia's instructions crumbled when confronted with the timeline he was seen acting on Bryce's direct orders. By the time Todd stepped down, sweaty and agitated, it was clear his testimony had likely worsened his case. Next, Bryce decided to testify despite Pierce's cautious advice. He walked to the stand with a veneer of calm arrogance. He spun a tale. He had only conspired with Felicia for harmless insurance manipulation, claiming Albert's orchard meltdown was the result of emotional family drama. He claimed Todd's sabotage was a misinterpretation. The DA fired direct questions. "Why did your emails mention lethal toxins? Why brandish a gun?" Bryce stumbled, asserting self-defense. "He was ex-military, a threat to me," he exclaimed. The orchard video played again, showing him aiming the weapon, demanding Albert sign the policy or face consequences. Bryce tried calling it theatrical intimidation, but the judge seemed unmoved. After a tense hour, Bryce's confidence visibly frayed. He shot one last glare at Albert, who watched impassively from the prosecutor's bench. At last, the trial approached its climax. Closing arguments. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Thompson laid out the prosecution's summary. All evidence converges on a single conclusion. Bryce Volkoff orchestrated a murder-for-insurance scheme, aided by Todd Edwards' sabotage. Felicia Richards, though initially complicit, pivoted once she realized the plan's lethal aim. The orchard incident was no misunderstanding, it was an attempted homicide. Lucia, though representing Albert primarily as a witness, assisted in ensuring his rights and providing clarity on Bryce's intimidation. She reaffirmed the orchard confrontation was unequivocal evidence of premeditated murder attempts, not mere theatrics. Pierce's final address tried painting Bryce as an overzealous businessman trapped by Felicia's alleged manipulations. The jury's guarded faces hinted they found this version unconvincing. By the time each side finished, the gallery felt the weight of inevitability. The judge sent the jury to deliberate, the entire courtroom holding its breath for a verdict that might shape many futures. After a relatively brief deliberation spanning 2 days, the jury sent word they had reached a verdict. The morning of the announcement, the gallery packed with reporters, curious locals, and a tense array of involved parties. Albert arrived early, wearing a subdued gray suit. Felicia sat across the aisle, hands clenched in her lap. Todd and Bryce were brought in under guard, faces pale. The judge convened the session and the jury forepersons stood. One by one, charges were read. For Bryce, Guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted insurance fraud, and additional firearms charges. Todd, guilty of attempted murder, accomplice, sabotage, and conspiracy. The lesser accomplices also found guilty of assault and conspiracy. Gasps rippled among spectators. Bryce slumped, though his eyes flicked with simmering rage. Todd groaned softly, lowering his head. The judge set a separate sentencing date. Albert exhaled a rush of relief, though a swirl of emotions churned. Justice served Bryce locked away. But what about his personal life and Felicia's uncertain fate? Post-verdict, the DA and Caroline hammered out Felicia's final legal path. Because she cooperated, testifying fully, providing evidence, and showing genuine remorse, the DA recommended a plea to lesser charges. In a brief hearing, Felicia pleaded guilty to aiding in an insurance fraud scheme and complicity under duress. The judge, seeing no lethal intent on her part, sentenced her to probation, community service, and mandatory financial restitution. She narrowly avoided jail, though the judge sternly admonished her for her reckless involvement. At the sentencing, Felicia trembled, tears rolling as the judge finalized the terms. She locked eyes once with Albert, who gave a slight nod, acknowledging her acceptance of responsibility. With Bryce and Todd convicted, Felicia on probation, and the Orchard fiasco concluded in court, a new chapter beckoned. Though the scars of betrayal and violence wouldn't vanish overnight, the threat was neutralized. Albert emerged from the courthouse a free man, free from mortal danger, though not from heartbreak. Felicia's role had cut deep, leaving their marriage in tatters, but at least she'd chosen to help rectify the damage in the end. Outside, flashbulbs popped, reporters clamoring for statements. Albert sidestepped them, stepping into the crisp afternoon with Abby and Dennis at his side. He gazed up at the wide sky, uncertain if true peace was possible, but hopeful that, with justice done, he might finally begin to heal. Chapter 11. In the weeks after the verdict, Greenhaven found itself slowly returning to normal rhythms. The once lingering swarm of media vans dissipated, replaced by customers seeking fall planting advice. Abby quietly led free workshops on garden basics, welcoming neighbors who asked, "Is Mr. Richards okay?" She answered with a reassuring smile. "He's doing better each day." Dennis resumed his friendly banter at the register, praising the orchard's resilience and offering tips to curious folks who inquired about bullet holes. "We patched up a few trunks, but the orchard's thriving." Albert took a more public role, stepping out to greet loyal patrons, grateful for their continued trust. Business wasn't quite at per-candle levels, but each passing day signaled slow, hopeful recovery. Despite the emotional strain, Felicia occasionally stopped by, fulfilling her restitution requirement to pay a portion of greenhouse repairs. She also had community service hours, ironically assigned to horticultural work at local parks. Whenever she arrived, a hush often fell in the greenhouse. Dennis gave polite nods. Abby kept busy but offered a quick greeting. Felicia would approach Albert with receipts or official documents, voice subdued. "I'm working to repay the orchard damage as the court mandated," she'd say. Albert remained cordial, though distant. "Thank you. Let me know if you need me to sign anything." A heavy tension underpinned their interactions. Felicia sometimes tried to slip in personal questions about his well-being, but Albert sidestepped them, focusing on business. She understood it was the best he could do for now. While many neighbors offered unwavering support, a few remained skeptical, especially about Felicia's continued presence. Some whispered judgments. How could she show her face here after that scandal? Others, more forgiving, noted that her cooperation helped convict Bryce. At a local town hall meeting, the mayor publicly praised Albert's bravery, awarding him a small civic commendation for resilience and contributions to community safety. Abby and Dennis beamed from the audience. Felicia stayed away, not wanting to overshadow the event. When she caught wind of the commendation through a news snippet, she felt simultaneous pride for Albert and regret she couldn't celebrate with him. One mild afternoon, Albert guided Abby and Dennis into the orchard with fresh saplings to replace a row of damaged fruit trees. The bullet-scarred trunks had survived, but a couple severely harmed ones needed replanting. As they dug holes, smoothed soil, and mulched, Albert spoke softly. "It's symbolic, I guess. We remove what's unsalvageable and plant new life." Abby offered a gentle nod. "It's a chance to move forward." She didn't voice it, but her gaze flickered toward Albert's wedding ring, still on his finger despite everything. She wondered if he was ready to remove it as well, to let go of old wounds. Dennis pointed out a small nest in one of the healthy pear trees, remarking how life continues even in battered branches. Albert found that comforting, a small sign that renewal was possible. Late in the orchard day, Felicia unexpectedly arrived, a check in hand for the orchard repairs. She found Abby alone by a row of newly planted saplings. Approaching timidly, Felicia said, "Abby, I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to pass this to you or Mr. Richards." She handed an envelope containing funds. Abby glanced around, noticing Albert was inside the greenhouse. She sighed. "I can give it to him, or you can." Felicia bit her lip. "He's busy, I'm sure. I just want you to know I appreciate your kindness. I betrayed everyone, but you never acted spiteful. It means a lot." Abby hesitated. "I'm not the one you hurt the most, so it's easy to be neutral. But still, I believe in second chances if you're sincere about changing." Tears pricked Felicia's eyes. "I am. I made the worst mistake of my life." She paused, admitting in a shaky voice, "I love Albert, but I know he might never forgive me." Abby gently touched Felicia's arm. "Give it time. Focus on doing right from now on. That's the best you can do." That evening, as twilight settled over the orchard, Lucia stopped by with a small envelope. She found Albert quietly reviewing greenhouse ledgers in the office. "Albert," she began, her voice soft. I hate to add more stress, but Felicia's attorney reached out. They want to finalize the legal status of your marriage. Either you remain separated indefinitely or consider formal steps." Albert felt a pang. "Divorce? She hasn't said anything to me." Lucia shrugged apologetically. "They're open to your decision, but realistically, you're living apart. Trust is broken. It's prudent to handle it legally." Albert closed his eyes. "I haven't fully decided. Part of me just wants to be done. Another part, I keep remembering the years we had before all this." Lucia rested a hand on his desk. "Take your time. You deserve closure, whichever path you choose." Days later, Felicia summoned the courage to speak directly with Albert about their marital limbo. She arrived after business hours, the greenhouse empty, but for Albert reviewing stock. She approached, an envelope in hand. "Albert Caroline prepared these," she said quietly, offering him potential divorce papers. "But I told her I wouldn't force you. If you want to sign, I'll understand. If you want me to sign, I will. Or if you prefer no action, that's okay too." He set down a tray of seedlings, turning to her. His face revealed a swirl of emotions, pain, sorrow, maybe faint longing. "Why would you let me decide?" Tears hovered in Felicia's eyes. "Because I took your choice away before. You deserve control now. I love you, but I can't pretend we're not broken. She swallowed. I'm leaving the final call to you. Albert stared at the envelope, a trembling in his chest. He nodded curtly. I'll think about it. Thank you for respecting that. Late that night, in his quiet home, Albert sat at the kitchen table with those divorce papers. A single overhead light glowed. Outside, crickets chirped in the darkness. He reread them multiple times. Memories flooding. Felicia laughing in sunlit gardens. The day they bought their first orchard sapling. The betrayal that nearly cost him his life. Her tearful confession in court. Her last gesture giving him the choice. After an hour of staring at blank lines, he set the pen aside. A wave of conflicting sentiments welled up. Anger at her collusion. Gratitude she saved him in the end. Love that might still flicker. He realized no signature tonight would bring clarity. He rose, pushing away from the table. For the first time in weeks, he found himself stepping onto the porch, gazing at the moonlit orchard, letting the hush soothe him. I'm not ready, he whispered. In the following weeks, life at Greenhaven found a gentle rhythm again. The orchard's new saplings took root well, symbolic of fresh starts. A calm winter season approached, allowing Albert to scale back operations and reflect. Felicia quietly completed her community service hours, planting trees in local parks. She also maintained restitution payments. She didn't press Albert about their relationship. Instead, she gave him space. Abby, noticing the subtle shift, told Dennis privately that she saw a glimmer of possible reconciliation, or at least civil closure, between them. Mr. Richards is less tense now, she observed, and Felicia is truly atoning. Dennis concurred. Sometimes time is the best remedy. The orchard no longer stood as a battlefield, but as a place of gentle regrowth. Bryce and Todd remained in prison, their final sentencing scheduled soon, an afterthought for Albert as he worked to rebuild. Felicia's presence lingered in the background, a complex question mark. She yearned for forgiveness but didn't demand it. Albert, torn between heartbreak and lingering affection, took solace in the orchard's slow healing, each budding leaf a silent metaphor that growth could follow devastation. A quiet sense of hope tiptoed in, that though betrayal cut deep, people and places might yet bloom anew. But the ultimate test, summing up the orchard saga with Bryce's final sentencing and Albert's personal choice on divorce, remained on the horizon, waiting to be resolved. Chapter 12. Late winter's chill gripped the county as the day of Bryce and Todd's sentencing arrived. The courthouse steps, dusted with light snow, were once more filled with murmuring onlookers and reporters who still found the story newsworthy. Albert arrived in a dark overcoat, shoulders squared. Abby and Dennis accompanied him for moral support. Felicia, escorted by Caroline, stood in the hallway, anxious. Inside, the judge took the bench. Bryce, wearing prisoner range, displayed a cold, unrepentant glare. Todd seemed deflated, posture slumped. The judge recounted the jury's guilty verdict, referencing the orchard standoff's dangerous severity, the near-fatal sabotage. He weighed the premeditated nature, concluding both deserved lengthy prison sentences. Bryce receiving 25 to 30 years, Todd 15 to 20, reflecting their roles and prior records. As the judge pronounced the sentence, Bryce erupted, pointing at Albert with shackled hands. "This isn't over. I'll find a way." The bailiffs immediately moved to restrain him. Gasps rippled among spectators. Albert held Bryce's livid gaze without flinching. There was no fear in Albert's eyes, only a calm finality. The judge slammed the gavel, warning Bryce to remain silent. Todd merely closed his eyes in resignation, tears forming at the corners. In the hush that followed, Felicia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The final chapter of Bryce's threat ended with the clang of the judge's gavel. Outside the courtroom, reporters pounced for statements. Albert firmly stated, "Justice is served. I'm grateful to law enforcement and the courts. Now I just want to move on." Felicia stayed back, avoiding cameras. Abby, smiling softly, told a local TV station, "We can finally breathe. Greenhaven can continue its mission without fear." Once the press parted, Felicia approached Albert, voice low. "It's over, thank God." Albert nodded. "Yes, Bryce can't hurt us anymore." Their eyes met, a swirl of complicated feelings exchanging in silence. Amid the orchard's slow winter schedule, Dennis, the longtime employee, privately informed Albert he planned to retire come spring. "I'm 70 now," he said with a wry grin, "ready to enjoy calm days. I'm proud to have seen this place through the storm." Albert felt both gratitude and sadness. "Dennis, you were a rock. Without you, Abby, I might have lost more than the orchard." They shared a warm handshake. Dennis promised to remain a consultant if needed. He wanted to see Greenhaven flourish under new expansions, perhaps watch a younger generation carry on. Though Bryce's trial concluded, Felicia continued her probation requirements. Each week, she performed park beautification tasks and horticultural lessons at a youth center. She discovered an odd sense of fulfillment, teaching children how to plant seeds, seeing them marvel at sprouts. It rekindled her old passion for nurturing growth, ironically reflecting what she'd once shared with Albert. One chilly afternoon, after finishing her youth center shift, Felicia stared at her phone, contemplating whether to text Albert about the day's small joys. She typed, then deleted, eventually sending a simple message. "Hope you're well. Today I taught kids to plant marigolds. It reminded me of the greenhouse. Take care." He read it hours later, quiet appreciation tugging at his heart. He replied with a brief, "Glad you're finding purpose. Keep it up." As the first warm breezes ushered in spring, Abby convinced Albert to hold a Greenhaven open house, inviting the community back to celebrate new orchard plantings and the shop's resilience. Local families attended, sampling fresh-squeezed juice from orchard fruits, strolling along blossoming rows. The bullet-scarred trunks that remained had healed bark. New saplings thrived. A sign read, "Greenhaven, growth after storms." Even the mayor dropped by, praising the orchard as a testament to triumph over adversity. Albert, though modest, felt a surge of pride. Abby and Dennis co-hosted the event, offering guided tours. Felicia appeared quietly, standing near the orchard's edge. She hadn't expected an invitation, but seeing the open gates, she ventured in. Toward the end of the open house, Albert found Felicia studying a new row of pear saplings. She looked reflective, wind brushing her hair. He approached, heart pounding mildly. "They're growing strong," he said simply. She turned. Their gazes locked for a moment, charged with unresolved memories. "Yes," she whispered. "It's beautiful." Silence settled, the orchard around them carrying hints of budding fruit. Felicia cleared her throat. I wanted to say I'm proud of you. Greenhaven survived everything." Albert sighed, glancing at the saplings. "We all survived. Are you doing okay?" She managed a small nod. "My probation continues, but I'm learning from it. If there's any redemption for me, it's in working with plants and kids, helping them grow." A faint, bittersweet smile tugged at Albert's lips. "That sounds right. Maybe there's a path forward for you." Later that evening, once the open house concluded, Felicia waited by the orchard gate, summoning courage. She handed Albert the same envelope of potential divorce papers. "I won't bring it up again after this, but it's your call. If you want to end it legally, I'll sign. If not, well, I'll respect your distance as long as needed." Albert held the envelope, pulse thrumming. He realized he'd wrestled with this question for months. Sever ties or attempt slow healing. He inhaled deeply, scanning her face, the regret etched there, the sincerity. "Felicia," he began, voice thick. "What you did hurt me more than I thought possible, and I can't pretend everything's fixed." He swallowed. "But a part of me remembers who we were. I don't know if we can get that back." She blinked away tears. "I understand. I'd do anything to earn back a fraction of your trust." He gazed at the orchard in the twilight, branches swaying gently. Finally, he returned the envelope to her hand, unopened. "Not yet," he said quietly. "I'm not ready to sign. Let's keep it open, see if time can do something." Felicia's breath caught. "Okay. Thank you." In the following weeks, Felicia honored Albert's boundaries, rarely contacting him except about orchard restitution. But each time they crossed paths, tension eased fractionally. Their conversations were polite, sometimes even warm. Abby noticed these changes, quietly hopeful. She overheard Albert once mention to Dennis that he hadn't worn his wedding ring in weeks, but he kept it in a drawer, not thrown away. That small detail spoke volumes about the delicate thread still connecting them. The shop prospered with new customers who admired the orchard's story of resilience. Locals began calling it the Orchard of Second Chances, a phrase that made Albert smile wryly. As spring light bathed the orchard's blooming blossoms, Albert stood among the rows. Each tree displayed fresh buds, vibrant and unscarred. Nearby, Abby guided a couple around, discussing which fruit variety might best suit their garden. Dennis completed his final months before retirement, content. Albert exhaled, letting the orchard's tranquility fill him. Bryce and Todd were gone, their menace locked away. The orchard had been their battleground. Now it thrived as a place of quiet renewal. Felicia's presence, once a torment, had evolved into a careful possibility of eventual reconciliation. Or, at least, forgiveness. He didn't know if they'd fully reunite, but he recognized a seed of compassion within him. He had no illusions that scars vanish overnight. Yet the orchard taught him growth can follow devastation. And just like the newly planted saplings, relationships might be nurtured anew if given honest effort and time. Sunlight streamed through the leaves, illuminating Albert as he touched the bark of a newly planted pear tree, feeling life pulsing within. The orchard, once marred by bullets, now stood as a testament to survival and hope. And in that moment, he allowed himself a quiet sense of peace, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring, knowing his world, though altered, was his to cultivate once more. Hey, Vixen. Cheating Tales listeners,